When a billionaire CEO finds her top analyst frozen and half dead in his car outside her mansion gates, she makes a choice that will either save her crumbling empire or destroy them both. Logan Pierce had 36 hours to fix an audit that could bankrupt a billion-dollar company. He had no home, no heat, and nowhere left to run. Isabella Hart had everything except the one thing that mattered, someone she could trust when the walls came down. This is their story. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you stay until the end, hit that like button. You won't regret it. The cold came in waves. Logan Pierce had learned that over the past 11 nights, sleeping in his 2004 Honda Civic. The first wave hit around midnight, sharp, biting, the kind that made your teeth chatter no matter how many layers you piled on. The second wave came around 3 a.m., deeper and meaner, seeping through the windows like water through a cracked hull. That's when the shivering turned involuntary, when your body stopped asking permission and just seized up trying to generate warmth it didn't have. Tonight, the second wave had arrived early. Logan pulled his knees tighter to his chest, his laptop balanced precariously on his thighs. The screen's glow was the only light inside the car, casting blue shadows across his hollow cheeks. His fingers, pale, trembling, moved across the keyboard in mechanical rhythm. Column after column of financial data scrolled past his bloodshot eyes. Revenue recognition, deferred liabilities, reconciliation errors dating back 14 months. The numbers blurred together, but he kept typing. He'd parked on Belmont Avenue 3 hours ago, tucked against the stone wall that surrounded the Hart estate. It wasn't the first time. Over the past week, this spot had become his unofficial office, close enough to the mansion's Wi-Fi signal that he could access the company's servers, far enough from the main gate that security didn't bother him. Usually. His phone buzzed. The battery icon flashed red, 8% remaining. Logan glanced at the notification. Isabella Hart, status update? He typed back with numb fingers. Logan Pierce, still working, found discrepancies in Q2, need another 6 hours minimum. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Isabella Hart, it's 2 a.m. Logan Pierce, audits due Monday. The dots vanished. No response. Logan set the phone down and returned to the spreadsheet. His breath came out in visible puffs, fogging the screen. He wiped it with his sleeve, the same sleeve he'd been wearing for 4 days straight. The coffee-stained cuff had gone stiff in the cold. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. He'd been Isabella Hart's senior financial analyst for 3 years. In that time, he'd saved the company twice. Once from an SEC inquiry that could have resulted in criminal charges, once from a merger deal that would have gutted the entire executive team. Both times, Isabella had thanked him with a brief nod and a modest bonus. That was fine. Logan didn't work for gratitude. He worked because it was the only thing he knew how to do right. The laptop fan whirred louder, struggling against the cold. Logan shifted his weight, trying to restore circulation to his left leg. His lower back had started cramping an hour ago, a dull, persistent ache that climbed his spine like a ladder. He ignored it the same way he ignored the hunger gnawing at his stomach, the same way he ignored the fact that he hadn't showered in 6 days. Details. Distractions. The audit mattered. Everything else could wait. His ex-wife hadn't understood that. Sarah had called it obsession, said he cared more about spreadsheets than his own family. Maybe she was right, but obsession paid the bills, or it had, until the custody lawyer bled his savings dry and the landlord stopped accepting "I'll have it next week" as rent payment. 3 months ago, Logan had a 2-bedroom apartment in a decent part of town. 2 months ago, he'd moved into a studio with a hot plate and a mattress on the floor. 1 month ago, the eviction notice came. Now he had a car and a laptop and 36 hours to prove he still mattered. The spreadsheet flagged another error. Invoice number 4721, dated March 18th, showed payment received but no corresponding deposit in the bank reconciliation. Logan frowned, cross-referencing it against the wire transfer logs. Nothing. He opened the vendor database, searched the company name. Deleted. His pulse quickened. Someone had scrubbed the record. Not recently. The metadata showed the deletion happened in April, almost 5 months ago. But the invoice remained in the accounting system, creating a phantom transaction that threw off the entire quarter's balance. Logan's hands moved faster now, adrenaline cutting through the exhaustion. He pulled up the April data backups, found the vendor file, restored it. A shell company. Registered in Delaware, dissolved 6 weeks after the payment cleared. $50,000. Gone. He tabbed over to the next flagged transaction. Same pattern. Payment issued, vendor deleted, no trace in the reconciliation. Another $75,000, then $120, then $210. Logan sat back, his breath coming faster. The car's windows had fogged completely now, sealing him in a cocoon of condensation and stale air. He wiped a circle clear with his palm, peering out at the mansion beyond the wall. Lights still burned in the second-floor office. Isabella was awake too. Did she know? Had someone on her team been siphoning money for months, covering their tracks with just enough sophistication to slip past the quarterly reviews? Or was this something worse? Something that went higher up the chain? Logan opened a new document, began drafting his findings. His fingers felt thick and clumsy on the keys, but the words came anyway. Clear, precise, damning. Evidence suggests systematic embezzlement via phantom vendor payments. Total estimated loss, $847,000. Transactions routed through... His phone buzzed again. Isabella Hart. Are you still outside? Logan stared at the message. How did she know? Logan Pierce. Yes. Isabella Hart. In your car? His throat tightened. He didn't answer. 30 seconds passed. A minute. Then, through the fogged window, Logan saw movement. A figure emerged from the mansion's front entrance, backlit by the warm glow of the foyer. Even at this distance, even through the haze, he recognized her silhouette. Tall, straight-backed, moving with the kind of purpose that made junior executives straighten their ties. Isabella Hart crossed the circular driveway, passed through the iron gate, and walked directly toward his car. Logan's first instinct was to start the engine, to drive away before she reached him. But the Civic had been making a grinding noise lately, and the battery barely held a charge. If he tried to start it now, in front of her, and it failed, he stayed put. Isabella stopped 3 feet from the driver's side door. She wore a charcoal wool coat over what looked like the same clothes from yesterday's emergency board meeting. Black slacks, white blouse, no jewelry except the watch her father had left her. Her dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail that had started to come loose. She didn't knock. She just stood there, her breath forming clouds in the freezing air, and waited. Logan unlocked the door. The sound seemed impossibly loud in the stillness. Isabella pulled the door open. Cold air flooded in, and Logan flinched despite himself. She looked at him for a long moment, really looked, taking in the sleeping bag bunched in the passenger seat, the empty protein bar wrappers on the dashboard, the duffel bag shoved behind the driver's seat that held everything he owned. Her expression didn't change. How long? She asked. Logan's voice came out rough. How long what? How long have you been living in your car? He could have lied, should have lied, but exhaustion had worn down his defenses, and the truth slipped out before he could stop it. 5 weeks. Isabella's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. She glanced back toward the mansion, then at him again. The audit, she said. Can you finish it from inside? Yes. I have everything on the laptop. Then get your things. You're coming with me. It wasn't a request. Logan opened his mouth to protest, to say he was fine, that he didn't need charity, that he'd be done in a few hours anyway. But the words died in his throat when he tried to move and his legs buckled beneath him. Isabella caught his elbow, steadying him. When did you last eat? She asked. Logan couldn't remember. Yesterday? The day before? I'm fine, he said. You're hypothermic. Her grip tightened. And you're about to pass out. So unless you want me to call an ambulance and have this conversation with paramedics, you'll shut up and let me help you. There was no anger in her voice, no pity either, just the same flat certainty she used in board meetings when someone suggested a bad idea and she needed to shut it down fast. Logan grabbed his laptop, his phone, the duffel bag. His movements felt disconnected, like he was piloting his body remotely through a bad connection. Isabella didn't let go of his arm as they walked toward the gate. The mansion loomed larger with each step, 3 stories of pale stone and dark windows, built by Isabella's grandfather in the 1960s, when Hart Industries was just a regional manufacturing outfit. Now, the company employed 12,000 people across 4 countries, and Isabella lived here alone. She keyed in the security code. The gate swung open. "Guest wing is on the 2nd floor," she said as they climbed the front steps. "3rd door on the right. Bathrooms attached. There's food in the kitchen if you're hungry." Logan nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Inside, the warmth hit him like a wall. His body's response was immediate and overwhelming. The shivering intensified, his vision blurred, his knees went liquid. He grabbed the doorframe to keep from falling. "Easy." Isabella's voice came from somewhere to his left. "Your core temperature's too low. The warmth is going to feel wrong for a few minutes." She guided him to a leather chair in the foyer. Logan sank into it, his laptop clutched against his chest like a shield. The house smelled like coffee and old books and something else he couldn't place. Lemon, maybe, or pine. Isabella disappeared down a hallway. He heard cabinet doors opening, the clink of glass, water running. She returned with a thick blanket and a mug of something steaming. "Drink," she said, handing him the mug. Broth? Chicken, heavily salted. Logan's hands shook so badly he nearly spilled it, but he managed to get the rim to his lips. The first sip burned going down. The second settled in his stomach like a stone. By the third, his body remembered what warmth felt like. Isabella draped the blanket over his shoulders. Then she pulled up a matching chair and sat across from him, her posture perfect despite the hour. "The discrepancies you mentioned," she said. "How bad?" Logan set the mug down. Even now, even barely conscious, his mind went straight to the numbers. "Bad," he said. "Someone's been running phantom vendor payments through the accounts payable system, 847,000 over 6 months. Maybe more if I go back further." Isabella's expression went very still. "Who?" "Don't know yet. The audit trail's been scrubbed, but whoever did it wasn't careful enough. I can trace it." "How long will that take?" "If I work straight through, 18 hours. Maybe 20. "You need to sleep." "I need to finish this." Logan met her gaze. "If the auditors find this before we do, they'll freeze the entire company. Every account, every transaction, everything. You'll be locked out of your own operation while they investigate." "I know how audits work, Logan." "Then you know we don't have time for me to sleep." Isabella leaned back in her chair, studying him. In the warm light of the foyer, Logan could see the exhaustion etched into her face. The shadows under her eyes, the tension in her jaw, the way her shoulders hadn't fully relaxed since she sat down. She looked exactly how he felt. "You'll work from the study," she said finally. "2nd floor, 1st door, past the guest wing. There's a desk, power outlets, better internet than whatever you were pulling from the curb. You'll stop every 2 hours to eat something, non-negotiable." Logan nodded. "And after this is done," Isabella continued, her voice quieter now, "we're going to talk about why you didn't tell me you lost your apartment. It's not your problem. You're my senior analyst. If you're compromised, my entire operation is compromised. That makes it my problem." She stood, smoothing her slacks. "Get cleaned up. I'll be in my office if you need anything." She turned to leave, then paused at the base of the stairs. "Logan?" "Yeah?" "Thank you for not giving up on this." Before he could respond, she was gone, her footsteps fading into the upper reaches of the house. What? Logan stood in the guest bathroom, staring at himself in the mirror. The man looking back was a stranger, hollow-eyed, unshaven, his skin the color of old newspaper. Somewhere in the past 5 weeks, he'd stopped recognizing his own face. He turned on the shower, let the water run until steam filled the room. Then he stripped off his clothes, 4 days' worth of sweat and car exhaust and shame, and stepped under the spray. The heat was almost painful. Logan braced himself against the tile, letting the water pound his shoulders, his back, his neck. Slowly, methodically, feeling returned to his extremities. His fingers stopped trembling, his thoughts cleared. He washed his hair twice, scrubbed his skin until it turned pink, stood there until the hot water ran out. When he finally stepped out, wrapped in a towel that was thicker than any blanket he'd owned in the past year, he felt almost human again. The guest room was exactly what he'd expected. Immaculate, impersonal, the kind of space designed for people passing through. A queen bed with hotel crisp sheets, a dresser, a reading chair by the window, everything in shades of cream and gray. Logan dressed in the only clean clothes he had left, jeans and a faded Georgetown t-shirt from his college days, and made his way to the study. Isabella hadn't exaggerated. The room was perfect. A massive oak desk dominated the space, flanked by floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. 2 monitors sat side by side, already powered on. A leather office chair that probably cost more than his car. Logan set up his laptop, connected it to the monitors, and got to work. The numbers swallowed him whole. Time became irrelevant. He fell into the rhythm he knew best: problem, hypothesis, evidence, solution. Each phantom transaction was a puzzle, and Logan had always been good at puzzles. You just had to find the pattern, follow it backward, see where the pieces didn't fit. Around 4 a.m., a plate appeared on the desk beside him. Sandwich, apple, glass of water. Logan ate without tasting, his eyes never leaving the screen. At 6, another plate. Eggs, toast, coffee. At 8, Isabella herself appeared in the doorway. "Progress?" she asked. Logan glanced up, blinking against the morning light streaming through the windows. Trace the payments back to their source. All of them route through a single approver in accounts payable, Jennifer Morse. Isabella's expression hardened. "Jen? She's been with us for 8 years. She might not be working alone." Logan pulled up a network diagram he'd been building. "Look at the timing. Every payment gets approved within 30 minutes of being submitted, always during her shift, never on her days off. But the actual submission comes from different user accounts. Whoever's behind this has access to multiple login credentials. Or they're spoofing the submission logs. Possible, but less likely. The metadata is too clean." Isabella moved closer, leaning over his shoulder to study the screen. This close, Logan could smell her shampoo, something subtle, expensive. It made him acutely aware of how he must look, even cleaned up. Threadbare clothes, 2 days stubble, he'd been too tired to shave. But if Isabella noticed, she didn't show it. "Can you identify the other accounts?" she asked. "Working on it. The problem is access permissions. I can see the transaction logs, but I can't cross-reference them with HR records without elevated security clearance." "I can get you clearance." "You'd have to notify IT. That might tip off whoever's behind this." Isabella was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she straightened, pulling her phone from her pocket. "David," she said when someone answered, "I need you to grant system-wide access to Logan Pierce's credentials. Everything except payroll and legal." "No, I don't care what time it is. Do it now." She paused. "Because I'm telling you to. That's all the authorization you need." She hung up. "You'll have access in 5 minutes," she said. Logan stared at her. "You just gave me keys to your entire operation." "Yes. You don't do that. Not without oversight. Not without—" "Logan." Isabella's voice cut through his protest. "In 3 years, you've never once given me a reason not to trust you. So I'm trusting you. Is that going to be a problem?" He swallowed hard. "No." "Good. Keep working. I have a conference call at 9, but I'll be back after." She left, taking the morning light with her. By noon, Logan had a name. Marcus Chen. VP of Operations, 15-year veteran, responsible for vendor relations and contract negotiations. He had the access, the authority, and the motive. His personal expenses had tripled in the past year, including a divorce settlement and a gambling habit he thought he'd hidden. Logan sat back, rubbing his eyes. The evidence was circumstantial but compelling. Chen submitted the invoices. Morse approved them. The money disappeared into shell companies that dissolved before anyone could ask questions. Clean, professional, and completely illegal. He drafted a summary report, attached the supporting documentation, and sent it to Isabella's private email. Then, because his body had finally hit its limit, he put his head down on the desk and closed his eyes. Just for a minute. Oh. When Logan woke, the light had changed. Afternoon sun slanted through the windows at a sharp angle, painting the bookshelves in gold. He lifted his head, disoriented, his neck screaming in protest. The desk clock read 4:47 p.m. "Shit," Logan muttered, reaching for his laptop. The screen had gone dark. He tapped the trackpad, waited for it to wake. "You needed the sleep." Logan spun around. Isabella stood in the doorway, holding a folder. She'd changed clothes since this morning. Gray slacks, navy blouse, hair down around her shoulders. She looked tired but composed, the way she always looked. "I read your report," she said, stepping into the room. "It's solid work." "I should have had it done by morning." "You had it done by noon. That's more than enough." She set the folder on the desk. "I spoke with legal. They're preparing termination paperwork for Chen and Morse. We'll move on it tomorrow morning before the audit team arrives." Logan nodded slowly. "They'll lawyer up, probably claim they were following orders from someone higher." "Let them. I've got your documentation. That's more than enough for the auditors and the DA if it comes to that." She pulled up the second chair, sitting down across from him the same way she had last night in the foyer. "I also spoke with HR," Isabella continued, "about your situation." Logan's stomach dropped. "I can find another place. I wasn't planning to—" "Stop." Isabella held up a hand. "Just listen for a second." He closed his mouth. "You're good at your job, Logan. Better than good. I've had 5 different people try to poach you over the past 2 years, and every time I've had to match their offer just to keep you. You know why I do that?" Logan shook his head. "Because you're the only person in that entire building who cares about getting it right more than looking right. Everyone else is worried about optics, about CYA, about making sure their name doesn't end up on the wrong email chain. You just fix things. No drama, no credit seeking. You see a problem, you solve it." She leaned forward, her elbows on her knees. "So, here's what's going to happen," she said. "You're going to stay here until you find a proper apartment. Not a favor, a practical arrangement. I have 12 empty bedrooms and you need a stable place to work. The guest wing is yours for as long as you need it." "Isabella, I can't—" "Yes, you can, and you will, because if you go back to sleeping in your car, you'll be useless to me, and we both know this audit isn't the last crisis we're going to face." Her expression softened slightly. "Besides, this place is too quiet. It'll be good to have someone else around." Logan wanted to argue, wanted to maintain some shred of dignity, to prove he could handle his own problems without charity from his boss. But the truth was, he was so tired of fighting, tired of pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't, tired of waking up frozen and hungry and ashamed. "Okay," he said quietly. "Thank you." Isabella nodded, standing. "There's a second bathroom down the hall if you need to clean up before dinner. I usually eat around 7. Nothing fancy, just whatever's in the kitchen. You're welcome to join me if you want company." She left before he could respond. Logan found Isabella in the kitchen at 7:10, standing at the stove in jeans and a sweatshirt, stirring something in a large pot. The whole room smelled like garlic and tomatoes. "Pasta," she said without turning around. "Hope that's okay." "More than okay." She gestured to the cabinet above the sink. "Plates are up there. Silverware's in the drawer by the dishwasher." Logan set the table while Isabella finished cooking. It was strange, this domesticity. He'd worked for her for 3 years and never imagined her doing something as mundane as making dinner. In his mind, she'd always existed in boardrooms and corner offices, commanding empires with a single email. But here she was, draining pasta, testing the sauce, moving through her kitchen with the easy confidence of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. They ate at the island, sitting on bar stools, plates balanced on the granite countertop. "This is really good," Logan said after the first bite. "My grandmother's recipe. Only thing she ever taught me before she died." Isabella twirled pasta around her fork. "She used to say that if you couldn't feed yourself, you couldn't take care of anyone else either." Smart woman. She was. Isabella took a sip of water. "She's also the one who started the company. Did you know that?" Logan shook his head. 1963. She bought a bankrupt textile mill with money she'd saved working as a seamstress, turned it into the biggest supplier of industrial fabrics in the region. My grandfather got all the credit because his name was on the paperwork, but it was her operation start to finish. Isabella's expression was distant, like she was looking at something Logan couldn't see. "When I took over," she continued, "everyone said I was too young, too inexperienced, a diversity hire trading on my family name. You know what I thought about every time someone said that?" "What?" "I thought about my grandmother working 16-hour days in a factory she owned but couldn't legally control because she was a woman. I thought about how she built something real anyway, how she didn't wait for permission or approval. She just did the work." Isabella met his eyes. That's what you do too. You don't wait around for someone to tell you it's okay to fix things. You just fix them. Logan didn't know what to say to that. They finished eating in comfortable silence. Afterward, Isabella washed while Logan dried, falling into an easy rhythm that felt like it had been practiced even though this was their first time. The board meeting's at 9 tomorrow, Isabella said as she handed him a plate. I'll need you there to present the audit findings. Me? You did the work. You should get the credit. I work for you. The credit goes to you. Logan, she turned off the water, facing him directly. Stop deflecting. You found $800,000 in fraud that would have sunk this company. Own it. He set the plate down carefully. What if they ask questions I can't answer? Then you say you don't know, and you'll find out. That's all anyone can ask. She dried her hands on a towel. Besides, you know this material better than anyone in that room, including me. You're not worried I'll screw it up? Are you planning to screw it up? No. Then we're fine. Isabella hung the towel on its hook. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be long. Bob. Logan lay in the guest bed, staring at the ceiling, wide awake despite his exhaustion. The sheets were too soft, the room too quiet. Everything felt wrong in a way he couldn't articulate, like wearing someone else's clothes, like standing in a life that didn't belong to him. He thought about his daughter, Mia. 7 years old, living with Sarah in a house Logan paid for but couldn't visit. Their custody arrangement gave him every other weekend, but he'd missed the last 3 because he'd been too broke to put gas in the car and too ashamed to tell Sarah why. Would she even remember him when this was over? His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Unknown. Found your car on Belmont. Towed it to impound. 72 hours to claim or it's auctioned. $485 fee. Logan closed his eyes. Of course the universe couldn't let him have one night without kicking him in the teeth. $485. He had $63 in his checking account and another $100 in savings he'd been holding back for emergencies. The car was worth maybe $800 if he sold it to a junkyard, which meant it was gone. His phone, his laptop, and now not even a car. Logan set the phone on the nightstand and pulled the blanket over his head, suddenly grateful for the darkness, for the privacy to fall apart where no one could see. Tomorrow he'd present findings to a board of directors who collectively controlled $9 billion in assets. Tonight he couldn't afford to save his own car. The irony wasn't lost on him. He must have finally fallen asleep because the next thing he knew, pale light was filtering through the curtains and someone was knocking on his door. Logan? Isabella's voice. It's 7:30. We need to leave in an hour. He sat up, disoriented. His phone showed 3 missed calls from Sarah and a text that just said, "We need to talk." Great. Logan showered, shaved with a disposable razor he found in the bathroom cabinet, and dressed in the only professional clothes he had left. Slacks and a button-down that had seen better days but still looked presentable if you didn't look too close. When he came downstairs, Isabella was waiting by the front door in a charcoal suit, her hair pulled back, every inch the CEO. Ready? She asked. Logan nodded, even though he wasn't, even though his stomach was in knots and his head felt like it was full of cotton. They drove to the office in Isabella's Mercedes, the silence stretching between them like something physical. Logan watched the city slide past the window, morning commuters, coffee shops opening their doors, people living normal lives. You okay? Isabella asked. Fine. Logan. He looked at her. She kept her eyes on the road, but her expression had softened. Whatever happens in there, she said, you've already done the hard part. Everything else is just theater. Theater determines whether I still have a job at the end of the day. You'll still have a job, I promise you that. Logan wanted to believe her, but promises were cheap, and he'd learned a long time ago that the only person you could count on was yourself. They pulled into the executive parking garage. Isabella killed the engine, but neither of them moved. My car got impounded, Logan said suddenly. He didn't know why he told her. It just came out. Isabella turned to look at him. When? Last night. Can't afford the fee. She was quiet for a moment, then she opened her door. Come on, she said. We've got a company to save. The boardroom occupied the entire north corner of the 32nd floor, floor-to-ceiling windows offering an unobstructed view of the city sprawling beneath them. Logan had been in this room exactly twice before, both times to deliver quarterly reports to people who barely looked up from their phones. Today, every seat was filled. Isabella took her position at the head of the table, Logan standing slightly behind her left shoulder. He clutched the folder containing his findings like a shield, acutely aware that his shirt collar was frayed and his shoes needed polishing, and he probably looked exactly like what he was, a man who'd been sleeping in his car a week ago. "Good morning," Isabella said, her voice cutting through the low murmur of conversation. The room fell silent. "Thank you all for coming on short notice. I know several of you had to reschedule, and I appreciate your flexibility." Robert Chen, the board chairman and no relation to Marcus, leaned back in his chair. He was 72, silver-haired, with the kind of tan that came from golf courses and Caribbean vacations. "This better be worth it, Isabella," he said. "I was supposed to be in Scottsdale this weekend." "It is," Isabella gestured to Logan. Logan Pierce, our senior financial analyst, uncovered significant irregularities in our accounts payable system. "Logan, walk them through what you found." Every eye in the room turned to him. Logan's mouth went dry. He opened the folder, pulled out the first page of documentation, and his hands were shaking badly enough that the paper rustled. "Stop it," he told himself. "You know this material. Just talk." "Over the past 6 months," Logan began, his voice rougher than he wanted, $847,000 has been systematically removed from company accounts through fraudulent vendor payments. Margaret Yu, the CFO, sat forward. "That's impossible. We have controls in place specifically to prevent—" The controls were circumvented. Logan pulled up the financial data on the large monitor behind him, his fingers steadier now that he had something to do. Someone with elevated access submitted invoices for non-existent vendors, had them approved through accounts payable, and deleted the vendor records after payment cleared. It was sophisticated enough to slip past quarterly reviews, but sloppy enough to leave a data trail. He walked them through it step by step. The phantom companies, the approval patterns, the metadata that didn't lie even when the visible records had been scrubbed. Robert Chen's expression had gone from annoyed to focused. "You said someone with elevated access. Who?" Logan glanced at Isabella. She gave him a small nod. "Marcus Chen," Logan said, "VP of Operations, and Jennifer Morse in Accounts Payable. Based on the approval timing and access logs, they were working together." The room erupted. 3 people started talking at once. Margaret Yu was on her phone, presumably calling legal. David Park, the general counsel, had gone pale. "Marcus has been with this company for 15 years, Robert said, his voice tight. "You better be absolutely certain about this, son." "I am." Logan pulled up another screen, showing the network diagram he'd built. "Every fraudulent invoice originates from his workstation. Every approval comes from Morse's credentials within 30 minutes. The pattern is consistent across 23 separate transactions. Where's the money now?" "Gone. Routed through shell companies in Delaware and Nevada. Dissolved within weeks of receiving payment. We might recover some of it if we move fast, but most is probably offshore by now." David Park cleared his throat. "We need to involve law enforcement. If this goes to trial—" "It won't go to trial," Isabella cut in. "We're terminating both employees effective immediately, cooperating fully with authorities, and implementing new oversight protocols before the external audit begins Monday. The auditors will see that we identified the problem ourselves, took immediate corrective action, and have systems in place to prevent recurrence." "That's a lot of faith in a tight timeline," Margaret said. "It's the only timeline we have." Isabella's tone left no room for argument. "The alternative is letting the auditors find it first, which triggers an immediate investigation, freezes our accounts, and tanks our stock price before we can contain the damage. This way, we control the narrative." Robert studied her for a long moment. Then he looked at Logan. "You found all of this in what, 48 hours? "Less," Logan said. "Working where? I didn't see any late-night access logs from your office." The question hung in the air. Logan felt Isabella tense slightly beside him. "I worked remotely," he said carefully. "From home?" "From wherever I had access to the necessary systems." Robert's eyes narrowed, but he didn't push further. Instead, he turned back to Isabella. "Your analyst just saved us from a catastrophic audit failure," he said. "What are you doing to make sure he doesn't get poached by someone who'll pay him what he's actually worth?" Logan felt heat creep up his neck. "We're working on a compensation adjustment," Isabella said smoothly. Logan's contributions haven't gone unnoticed. See that they don't. Robert stood, buttoning his suit jacket. I want written confirmation that both employees have been terminated by end of business today. Legal can handle the rest. And Isabella? Yes? Good work, both of you. The board filed out, most of them already on their phones, leaving Logan and Isabella alone in the too large room. Logan sank into the nearest chair, his legs suddenly unreliable. You okay? Isabella asked. I think I'm going to throw up. Bathroom's down the hall on the left. He shook his head. I'm fine, just... That was intense. You did well. Isabella gathered her papers, sliding them back into her briefcase. Robert doesn't give compliments unless he means them. And he definitely doesn't advocate for raises unless he's impressed. About that, we'll talk compensation later. Right now, I need you focused on making sure the audit goes smoothly. She checked her watch. Security's escorting Marcus and Jennifer out of the building in 20 minutes. I want you there to secure their workstations before anyone has a chance to delete evidence. Logan stood, his professional instincts overriding the exhaustion. You think they'll try? I think people do stupid things when they're cornered. Better safe than sorry. They rode the elevator down to the 15th floor in silence. When the doors opened, Logan could already see the commotion. Security guards posted outside Marcus's office. Employees gathered in clusters whispering, the whole floor buzzing with the kind of nervous energy that came before layoffs or mergers. Marcus himself sat at his desk, stone-faced, while a security guard stood by the door. He looked up when Isabella entered, and something ugly flickered across his expression. Isabella, he said, his voice carefully neutral. Want to tell me what's going on? You're terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you out once you've collected your personal belongings. Your access to company systems has been revoked. On what grounds? Embezzlement? Fraud? Take your pick. Isabella's tone was arctic. We have documentation, Marcus. Don't insult either of us by pretending you don't know what I'm talking about. Marcus's composure cracked. You can't prove anything. Actually, we can. Logan stepped forward, pulling up the evidence on his tablet. 23 fraudulent transactions, all originating from this workstation. $847,000 routed through companies you created. Jennifer Morse is already in an interrogation room with legal. How long do you think it'll take before she gives you up to save herself? The color drained from Marcus's face. I want a lawyer, he said. You'll get one. In the meantime, collect your things. You have 5 minutes. Security escorted Marcus out 12 minutes later, carrying a small cardboard box and looking 10 years older than he had that morning. Logan watched from the office doorway as the elevator doors closed on 15 years of employment reduced to stolen stationery and a coffee mug. Don't, Isabella said quietly. Don't what? Don't feel sorry for him. He made his choices. Logan turned back to the computer, already pulling up system logs. Doesn't mean I have to like watching it. No, Isabella agreed. It doesn't. They spent the next 3 hours combing through Marcus's workstation, copying files, documenting everything. By the time they finished, Logan's eyes burned and his head pounded, and he couldn't remember the last time he'd had water. Isabella handed him a bottle from the small fridge in the corner of the office. Drink, she said. You look like hell. Thanks. I'm serious. When's the last time you ate? Logan tried to remember. The pasta last night? Or had there been something this morning? Everything blurred together. I'm fine, he said automatically. Logan? Isabella's voice had taken on that particular tone that meant she wasn't asking. We're getting food, now. They ended up in a small Vietnamese place 3 blocks from the office, tucked into a corner booth while the lunch rush swirled around them. Isabella ordered for both of them without looking at the menu, rattling off dishes in what sounded like fluent Vietnamese. You speak Vietnamese? Logan asked. My nanny growing up. She taught me while my parents were busy running the company. Isabella poured tea into both cups. Said if I was going to be rich, I should at least know how to talk to regular people. Was she right? About which part? Either. Isabella smiled, a real one this time, not the practiced expression she wore in board meetings. She was right about most things, including the fact that pho cures everything from hangovers to heartbreak. The food arrived, steaming steaming bowls of broth and noodles, plates of fresh herbs, lime wedges. Logan's stomach growled so loudly that Isabella laughed. "Eat," she said. "That's an order." They ate in silence for a while, the sounds of the restaurant filling the space between them. Logan couldn't remember the last time food had tasted this good, or maybe he was just so hungry that anything would have tasted good. "Can I ask you something?" he said finally. "Go ahead." "Why are you doing this?" Isabella set down her chopsticks. "Doing what?" "All of it. Letting me stay at your place, bringing me to the board meeting. This." He gestured at the food. "You could have just given me a hotel voucher and kept me at arm's length. Most CEOs would have." "Most CEOs are idiots." Isabella took a sip of tea. "You want the honest answer?" "Yeah. Because I'm tired of being surrounded by people who only tell me what they think I want to hear. Everyone in that building is so busy managing up, managing their image, managing their next promotion, that nobody just does the actual work anymore. Except you." She met his eyes. "You don't care about any of that. You just fix things. And right now I need someone I can trust to fix things." Logan looked down at his bowl. "I'm not sure I'm that person." "Why not?" "Because I can't even fix my own life. I'm 32 years old and I was living in my car. My ex-wife won't let me see my daughter because I can't afford child support. I lost everything, Isabella. What makes you think I can help you?" The words came out harsher than he intended, edged with a bitterness he'd been trying to keep buried. Isabella didn't flinch. "You know what I see when I look at you?" she said quietly. "I see someone who kept working even when he had every reason to quit. Someone who found $800,000 in fraud while sitting in a freezing car because the job mattered more than his own comfort. You didn't lose everything, Logan. You lost things. There's a difference. Easy to say when you have a mansion and a Mercedes. You think I don't know what it's like to lose things?" Isabella's voice had gone sharp. "My father died when I was 26, left me a company that was bleeding money and a board that wanted to sell it for parts. My mother blamed me for not being the son he'd wanted. I spent 3 years pulling 70-hour weeks trying to prove I deserved the name on the building while everyone waited for me to fail." She leaned forward, her expression intense. "So no, I don't know what it's like to sleep in a car. But I know what it's like to feel like you're one mistake away from losing everything you've built. And I know that the people who survive that aren't the ones with the most resources. They're the ones stubborn enough to keep going when it would be easier to give up." Logan didn't know what to say to that. They finished eating, the tension slowly dissipating back into something manageable. Isabella paid over Logan's protests, and they walked back to the office through streets crowded with afternoon shoppers and tourists. "I need to ask you something," Isabella said as they waited for a light to change. "Okay." "The audit's on a Monday. We have the weekend to prepare. Make sure everything's airtight before the auditors arrive. I need someone I trust going through every transaction, every account, every piece of documentation." She paused. "I need you to lead that effort." Logan stopped walking. "Isabella, I can't." "Yes, you can. I'm an analyst. You should have the CFO handling this, or at least someone with director-level authority. Margaret's good at her job, but she's too close to the systems. She approved half the protocols that Marcus exploited. I need fresh eyes." Isabella turned to face him fully. "I need your eyes. What if I miss something? Then we deal with it. But I trust your work more than I trust anyone else's right now. So I'm asking, will you do this?" Logan thought about his daughter, about the impound lot holding his car, about the fact that he was standing on a street corner being offered responsibility that could make or break a billion-dollar company, and 2 weeks ago he'd been eating gas station sandwiches for dinner. "Yeah," he said. "I'll do it." "Good." Isabella started walking again. "We'll work from the house. More privacy, fewer interruptions. I'll have IT send over everything you need." They spent the rest of Friday afternoon in Isabella's home office. Logan methodically building spreadsheets while Isabella fielded calls from lawyers and board members and investigators. The house felt different in daylight, less imposing, more lived in. Sun streamed through tall windows, warming the hardwood floors. In the distance, Logan could hear a lawnmower, the normal sounds of a neighborhood that cost more per month than most people made in a year. Around 7, Isabella emerged from her office looking haggard. "I need a break," she announced. "And you've been staring at that screen for 4 hours straight." Logan rubbed his eyes. "I'm almost done with the Q2 reconciliation." "It can wait. Come on." She led him down a hallway he hadn't explored yet, through a door that opened onto an indoor pool. The water glowed blue-green under recessed lighting, perfectly still, reflecting the glass ceiling overhead. "I swim laps when I need to think," Isabella said. "Helps clear my head. You're welcome to join me or just sit. But you need to stop working for at least an hour or you're going to burn out before Monday." Logan had been wearing the same clothes since this morning. He definitely didn't have swim trunks. "I'll just sit," he said. Isabella disappeared into a changing room and emerged a few minutes later in a plain black swimsuit, her hair pulled up. She dove cleanly into the water and started swimming, her strokes efficient and rhythmic. Logan sat on one of the lounge chairs, watching her move through the water. It was strange seeing her like this. No makeup, no suit, just a person swimming laps in her own pool. Human in a way she never seemed at the office. After 20 minutes, she climbed out, grabbed a towel, and sat down on the chair next to his. "Better?" Logan asked. "Getting there." She wrung water from her hair. "What about you? How are you holding up?" "I'm fine." "Logan." "What?" "You've said I'm fine approximately 30 times in the past 2 days. At some point, you're going to have to admit that you're not actually fine." Logan was quiet for a moment, watching the water lap gently against the pool's edge. "I got a text from my ex-wife this morning," he said finally. "She wants to talk, which usually means she wants something I can't give her." "Like what?" "Money. Time with Mia that I haven't earned. Proof that I'm not a complete disaster." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Can't really argue with that last one." Isabella stood, wrapping the towel around her shoulders. "Come on, I want to show you something." She led him upstairs to a room at the end of the hall. When she opened the door, Logan saw it was an office, but not like the sterile study where he'd been working. This one was personal. Photos on the walls, books stacked haphazardly on shelves, a desk covered in papers and coffee cups, and the comfortable chaos of someone who actually used the space. Isabella pulled a framed photo from the shelf and handed it to him. It showed a younger version of her, maybe 25, standing next to an older man in a hospital bed. Both of them were smiling, but the man's smile was tired, his skin gray. "My father," Isabella said, 3 weeks before he died. Pancreatic cancer, diagnosed stage 4. He had maybe 2 months left, and he spent most of that time trying to teach me everything he knew about running the company." She took the photo back, studying it. "I wasn't ready," she continued. "I had an MBA and 2 years of experience and absolutely no idea what I was doing. The board wanted to bring in outside management. My mother agreed with them. Everyone thought I'd fail." "But you didn't." "No, but some days I came close." Isabella set the photo down. "The first year, I lost 12 pounds because I forgot to eat. I slept maybe 4 hours a night. I cried in my car more times than I can count, because I couldn't let anyone at the office see me break." She turned to face him. "My point is, everyone's a disaster, Logan. The difference is some people hide it better than others. You think I have everything figured out? I'm 30 years old, running a company I inherited, living in a house too big for one person because I'm too busy to have any kind of personal life. The longest relationship I've had in 5 years was with my physical therapist, and that ended when I couldn't make time for appointments." Logan almost smiled. "That's depressing." "It is, but it's also true." Isabella moved toward the door. "So when you say you're a disaster, all I hear is that you're human, and honestly, I'll take human over polished any day." They went back downstairs. Isabella ordered Chinese food, too much of it, enough for 4 people, and they ate sitting on the floor of the living room with cartons spread out on the coffee table like a buffet. "This is the most informal meal I've had in this house in 3 years, Isabella said, stabbing her chopsticks into lo mein. "What do you usually do? Eat at my desk? Or skip meals entirely and just drink coffee until I feel sick?" She paused. "My executive assistant has started scheduling lunch meetings just to make sure I eat something. That's definitely not healthy," says the man who was living off protein bars in desperation. Fair point. They worked until midnight, taking breaks to eat leftover Chinese food and argue about the best way to organize the audit documentation. Isabella wanted everything in chronological order. Logan insisted on grouping by transaction type. They compromised by creating 2 separate indexes. Around 1 a.m., Logan found himself staring at the same column of numbers for the 3rd time, the figures refusing to cooperate with his exhausted brain. "Go to bed," Isabella said without looking up from her own laptop. I'm almost done. Logan, bed. Now. He wanted to argue, but his body betrayed him with a yawn so massive his jaw cracked. Fine, he muttered. He made it to the guest room, collapsed onto the bed fully clothed, and was asleep before his head hit the pillow. Somewhere in the deepest part of the night, Logan woke to voices. At first he thought he'd imagined it. But no, there it was again, coming from down the hall. Isabella's voice, tight with stress, saying something he couldn't quite make out. He got up, moved quietly to his door, opened it a crack. Isabella stood in the hallway outside her office, phone pressed to her ear, wearing pajama pants and a Georgetown t-shirt that looked exactly like the one Logan owned. I don't care what time it is in London, she was saying. I need those Q3 projections by Monday morning, or the auditors are going to assume we're hiding something. A pause. Then wake him up. I'm not asking, David, I'm telling you. Another pause, longer this time. Fine. But if this delays the audit clearance, I'm holding you personally responsible. She hung up, pressed her palms against her eyes. Logan stepped into the hallway. Everything okay? Isabella dropped her hands, startled. I didn't mean to wake you. You didn't. I was already up. A lie, but a kind one. What's wrong? Our London office was supposed to send updated financials 2 days ago. They're claiming technical difficulties, but I think someone over there is stalling. She leaned against the wall, suddenly looking exhausted. If we don't have those numbers by Monday, the auditors are going to think we're deliberately withholding information. Can you pull the data yourself? Not without admin access to their regional servers, and IT won't grant that without approval from their managing director, who conveniently isn't answering his phone. Logan thought for a moment. What if we don't wait for approval? Isabella looked at him sharply. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that you already gave me system-wide access yesterday, which technically includes the London servers. That's legally questionable at best. So is embezzling $800,000, but Marcus did it anyway. Logan crossed his arms. Look, if there's nothing wrong, we grab the data and nobody has to know we went around their managing director. If there is something wrong, we find it before the auditors do. Isabella was quiet for a long moment, weighing the options. Do it, she said finally. But if anyone asks, I didn't authorize this. Noted. They went back to the study. Logan logged into the system, navigating through security protocols that should have stopped him, but didn't. The London server opened like a door left unlocked. I'm in, he said. How long will it take to pull the Q3 data? Depends on how organized their files are. Logan started opening folders, scanning for the right financial reports. Could be 20 minutes. Could be... He stopped. What? Isabella moved closer, looking over his shoulder. Logan pointed at the screen. Their accounts receivable doesn't match the invoices. What do you mean? I mean, there's a $15 million gap between what they're claiming they billed and what actually got paid. His fingers moved faster now, pulling up more files. And it's not just 1 month. It goes back at least 6 quarters. Isabella's expression had gone very still. Show me. Logan pulled up the comparative data, laying it out side by side. The discrepancy was unmistakable. The London office had been reporting revenue that didn't exist, inflating their numbers to make the division look more profitable than it actually was. This is worse than Marcus, Isabella said quietly. This is fraud at a management level. And if the auditors find it Monday, they'll assume I knew, that I've been cooking the books to inflate the stock price. She sank into a chair. My career is over. Not if we disclose it first. Logan, we're talking about $15 million in phantom revenue. The board will demand my resignation. The stock will tank. We might not survive this. We might not survive hiding it either. Logan turned to face her. You told me earlier that you needed someone who'd tell you the truth instead of what you wanted to hear. So here's the truth. We report this now, take our lumps, and rebuild. Or we bury it and hope the auditors miss it, which they won't, and then we lose everything anyway. Isabella closed her eyes. I need to think. We don't have time to think. It's Saturday morning. The audit starts Monday. We have maybe 36 hours to get ahead of this. I know. Her voice cracked slightly. I know. I need a minute to process the fact that my entire company might be collapsing around me. Logan backed off, giving her space. She sat there for several minutes, perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady again. "Pull everything," she said. "Every transaction, every report, every piece of documentation from the London office going back 2 years. I want to know exactly how deep this goes before I call Robert." "Robert Chen, the board chairman?" "He needs to know before Monday. We can't blindside the board with this." Logan nodded and got to work. They spent the rest of Saturday systematically dismantling the London office's financial records. With each new file, the picture grew clearer and worse. The phantom revenue wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate, systematic, and involved at least 3 senior managers. Around noon, Isabella ordered food that neither of them touched. Around 4, she made the call to Robert. Logan couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but he could see Isabella's face tighten with each passing minute. "Yes, I understand," she said finally. "Monday morning. I'll have full documentation ready." She hung up. "He's calling an emergency board meeting," she said. "Monday, 7 a.m., before the auditors arrive. We present everything. Marcus, London, all of it, and let the board decide how to proceed." "What did he say about your position?" "He said we'd discuss it Monday." Isabella's expression was unreadable. "Which means he's already talking to the other board members about replacing me." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." She stood straightening her shoulders. "But it doesn't matter. We do this right, regardless of what happens to me. The company has 12,000 employees who don't deserve to lose their jobs because of management failures." Logan watched her walk to the window, staring out at the manicured lawn beyond. "You're not going to fight for your job?" he asked. "What would be the point? The numbers speak for themselves. The numbers show that you inherited a mess and you're cleaning it up. That's not failure, Isabella. That's leadership." She turned to look at him, something vulnerable flickering across her face before she locked it down again. "Finish the documentation," she said. "I need to make some calls." Logan worked through the evening, building the most comprehensive audit trail he'd ever created. Every transaction documented, every discrepancy highlighted, every piece of evidence organized and indexed and ready for scrutiny. Around midnight, Isabella appeared in the doorway holding 2 glasses of whiskey. "Take a break," she said, handing him one. They sat in the study's matching leather chairs, drinking in silence. The whiskey burned going down, warming Logan from the inside out. "Can I ask you something personal?" Isabella said after a while. "Sure." "Why'd you and your wife split up?" Logan took another sip before answering. "She said I cared more about work than I cared about her, about Mia." "Did you?" "I don't know, maybe." He stared into his glass. "I thought I was providing for them. Thought that's what being a good husband and father meant, making sure they had everything they needed. But Sarah didn't need things. She needed me to be present, and I wasn't." "Is that why you lost custody?" "Part of it. The other part was that I couldn't afford a lawyer as good as hers." Logan laughed bitterly. "Turns out being right doesn't matter much when you're broke." Isabella was quiet for a moment. "Do you regret it? The divorce?" "Every day. Not because I want to be with Sarah, that ship sailed a long time ago, but because Mia deserves better than a father who sees her every other weekend. If he can even afford gas money." "You could see her now." "You're not living in your car anymore." "Yeah, but for how long? Monday comes, you might lose your job, which means I probably lose mine. And then I'm right back where I started." "So what, you're just going to give up?" Logan looked at her. "That's not what I said." "It's what I heard." Isabella set down her glass. "You spent 2 days finding $800,000 in fraud while living in your car. You just uncovered $15 million in phantom revenue that could have destroyed this company. You did all of that with nothing except a laptop and determination. And now you're telling me you can't figure out how to see your own daughter? It's not that simple. It never is. But you're smart enough to find solutions when it matters. So make it matter." She stood, leaving her glass on the side table. "Get some sleep," she said. "We have a long day tomorrow." Logan sat alone in the study, turning her words over in his mind. When he finally went to bed, he pulled out his phone and typed a message to Sarah. "Logan, I know I haven't been around. I know I've let you both down, but I want to fix that. Can we talk tomorrow?" He hit send before he could second-guess himself. The response came 5 minutes later. Sarah, Mia's been asking about you. Come by tomorrow, 2 p.m. Don't be late. Logan read the message 3 times, something tight loosening in his chest. Maybe things weren't as broken as he'd thought. Maybe there was still time to fix them. Sunday morning arrived with pale winter sunlight filtering through the guest room curtains. Logan woke to the smell of coffee and the distant sound of Isabella's voice somewhere downstairs, calm and measured as she spoke to someone on the phone. He checked the time, 8:30. He'd slept almost 6 hours straight, more than he'd managed in weeks. His phone showed 2 new messages, one from Sarah confirming their 2 o'clock meeting, the other from a number he didn't recognize. Unknown. This is Margaret Yu. Isabella gave me your number. Need you to review final London documentation before board meeting tomorrow. Can you be at office by 10? Logan texted back a confirmation and hauled himself out of bed. His body ached in places he'd forgotten could ache, shoulders, lower back, the base of his skull where tension had been building for days. A hot shower helped, but not enough. When he came downstairs, Isabella was in the kitchen pouring coffee into 2 travel mugs. She'd already dressed for the day in jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked tired but focused, the way soldiers probably looked before going into battle. Margaret needs me at the office, Logan said. I know, I asked her to pull you in. Isabella handed him one of the mugs. The board's going to have questions about the London numbers. She needs your help making sure we can answer all of them. What about you? I have calls with our attorneys. They're advising on how to structure the disclosure to minimize legal exposure. She grabbed her keys from the counter. I'll drive you. They took the Mercedes again, navigating Sunday morning traffic that was lighter than usual. The city looked different on weekends, quieter, slower, like it had permission to breathe for a couple days before Monday came and demanded everything again. You're seeing your daughter today, Isabella said. It wasn't a question. 2 o'clock. If I can borrow a car to get there. Take the Mercedes. I won't need it. Logan almost laughed. I can't show up to my ex-wife's house in a Mercedes. She'll think I've lost my mind. Then take an Uber, but don't miss it because of logistics. Isabella glanced at him. When's the last time you saw her? 3 weeks, maybe 4. That's too long. I know. They pulled into the executive parking garage. The building was mostly empty on Sundays, just a handful of cars belonging to people who either loved their jobs or feared losing them. Logan suspected he and Margaret fell into the latter category. I'll be done by 1, Logan said as he got out. That gives me enough time to get across town. Logan, Isabella's voice stopped him. Whatever happens tomorrow, you did good work here. Don't forget that. He nodded, throat suddenly tight, and headed inside. Margaret Yu had commandeered the main conference room, transforming it into a war room. Papers covered every surface, 3 laptops running simultaneously, a whiteboard filled with numbers and arrows and questions written in red marker. She looked up when Logan entered, her expression harried. Thank God, she said. I've been going through the London files and nothing makes sense. How did you find the discrepancies so fast? Logan set down his coffee and moved to the whiteboard. What are you stuck on? Everything. The revenue recognition patterns don't match our standard protocols, but I can't tell if that's fraud or just regional accounting differences. And these vendor payments, she gestured at a spreadsheet, half of them route through subsidiaries I've never heard of. Show me. They spent the next 3 hours rebuilding the entire London financial structure from the ground up. Margaret was brilliant with numbers, but she thought in systems and processes, which made it hard for her to see where those systems had been deliberately broken. Logan thought in patterns and anomalies, which made the breaks obvious. There, he said, pointing at a cluster of transactions from Q2. These 5 payments all clear on the same day, same amount, but they're supposedly for different services from different vendors. That's not coincidence. That's someone running the same transaction through multiple shells to hide the total. Margaret's eyes widened. That's almost 2 million right there. And there's probably more. Whoever set this up knew exactly how to exploit the reconciliation gaps between regional offices. Do you think Isabella knew? The question hung in the air between them. No, Logan said firmly. She's the one who pushed me to investigate. If she'd known, she would have buried it, not exposed it. The board might not see it that way. They might think she's only coming forward because she knew we'd find it anyway. Margaret sat down heavily. She could lose everything tomorrow. Then we make sure the evidence shows she didn't know. We document every communication, every approval chain, every decision point that demonstrates the London office was operating independently. Can we do that in, Margaret checked her watch, 16 hours? We have to. They worked in focused silence, building timelines and documentation chains, cross-referencing emails and meeting notes. Around noon, Margaret ordered sandwiches that arrived cold and slightly soggy. They ate while continuing to work, mayonnaise dripping onto financial reports that represented someone's career ending. At 12:45, Logan's phone buzzed. Reminder about his 2 o'clock with Sarah. He saved his work, started closing files. You have to leave? Margaret asked. Yeah, family thing. Will you be back? Logan thought about it. He could come back, spend another 6 hours making sure every piece of documentation was perfect, every question pre-answered. Or he could trust that Margaret was smart enough to handle the rest, and he could go do the thing Isabella had told him to do, make seeing his daughter matter. No, he said, but call me if you need anything. I'll have my phone. Margaret nodded, already refocusing on her screen. Good luck, with whatever it is. Yeah, you too. Logan took an Uber across town, watching the neighborhoods change through the window. Isabella's area gave way to suburbs, which gave way to the kind of middle-class development where Sarah had bought a house with her new boyfriend, a dentist named Eric who probably had never slept in his car or missed a child support payment in his life. The Uber dropped him off at 1:58. Logan stood on the sidewalk, staring at the house with its tidy lawn and 2-car garage and the basketball hoop in the driveway. Through the front window, he could see movement. His hands were shaking. He forced himself to walk up the path and ring the doorbell. Sarah answered, looking exactly like she always did. Blonde hair pulled into a practical ponytail, minimal makeup, wearing yoga pants and a sweatshirt from the gym she belonged to. Behind her, Logan could hear a TV playing something animated. You're on time, Sarah said, not warmly, but not hostile either. That's new. I'm trying. She studied him for a moment, and Logan wondered what she saw. Did he look different? Less desperate? Or did she still see the same man who'd failed her for 5 years? Mia's in the living room, Sarah said finally, stepping aside. You have until 4. Eric's taking us to dinner at 5. Of course Eric was. Eric probably had reservations at a nice place with cloth napkins and a kid's menu that came with crayons. Logan stepped inside, and there she was. Mia sat cross-legged on the floor in front of the TV, still in her pajamas, even though it was 2 in the afternoon, her dark hair tangled and her attention completely absorbed by whatever cartoon was playing. She was 7 years old and growing so fast Logan felt like he missed entire developmental stages between visits. Hey, kiddo, he said softly. She turned, and her face lit up in a way that made Logan's chest hurt. Daddy! She launched herself at him, all elbows and knees and momentum. Logan caught her, lifting her up even though she was really too big for that now. She smelled like maple syrup and shampoo. I missed you, Mia said into his shoulder. I missed you too, baby. So much. Sarah had disappeared into the kitchen, giving them space. Logan set Mia down and took in the living room, toys organized in bins, photos on the wall of Mia and Sarah and Eric at places Logan had never been. A whole life he wasn't part of. Want to show me what you're watching? He asked. They sat on the couch together, Mia narrating the plot of a show Logan didn't recognize but pretended to follow. She leaned against his side, her small hand finding his, and Logan thought about all the Sunday afternoons he'd missed. All the bedtimes and breakfasts and ordinary moments that added up to a childhood he was watching from the outside. After a while, Mia looked up at him. Mommy said you have a new job. Same job, just I'm working on some important stuff right now. Is that why you couldn't come see me? The question was innocent, but it cut deeper than any accusation. No, Logan said honestly. I should have come anyway. I'm sorry I didn't. It's okay. Mommy said you were busy. Logan wondered what else Sarah had said. Whether she'd told Mia about the car, about the eviction, about all the ways her father had fallen apart. I'm gonna do better, he said. I promise. Eric says you shouldn't make promises you can't keep. Yeah, well, Eric doesn't know everything. Mia giggled at that, and Logan felt something warm unfold in his chest. They watched TV for another hour. Mia periodically updating him on school and her friends, and the fact that she'd lost another tooth last week. Did the tooth fairy come? Logan asked. Uh-huh. She left $5. Wow, that's pretty good. Eric says tooth fairies are just parents, but I don't think so because Mommy was asleep when I checked. Logan smiled despite himself. At 7, Mia still believed in magic. He wanted to keep it that way as long as possible. At 3:30, Sarah returned with glasses of lemonade for both of them. How's it going? She asked. Good, Mia said. Daddy likes my show. I bet he does. Sarah handed Logan his glass. Can I talk to you for a minute? In the kitchen, Logan followed her, leaving Mia absorbed in her cartoon. The kitchen was immaculate. Granite counters, stainless appliances, a calendar on the fridge, marking play dates and dentist appointments and all the logistics of a functional family. She's been asking about you constantly, Sarah said quietly. Every night before bed, she wants to know when you're coming to visit. I know. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't really help her, Logan. She needs consistency. She needs to know you're going to show up when you say you will. I'm working on it. Are you? Sarah crossed her arms. Because 3 weeks ago you told me you'd have the child support by the 15th, and it's now the 18th and I haven't seen anything. Logan's stomach sank. I know. Things got complicated. Things are always complicated with you. That's the problem. Sarah's voice was rising slightly, frustration bleeding through. I'm not trying to punish you, but Mia has needs. She needs clothes and school supplies and activities with her friends. I can't keep covering everything while you figure out your life. I have the money now. I can transfer it today. You do? What changed? Logan almost told her everything. The car, Isabella, the mansion, the audit that might destroy both their careers tomorrow. But that would just prove Sarah's point about his life being chaos. I got a bonus, he said instead, for a project I finished. It wasn't exactly a lie. Isabella had mentioned compensation adjustments. Sarah studied him suspiciously. A bonus big enough to cover 3 months of back payments? Yeah. She didn't believe him. He could see it in her face, but she also didn't push, which meant some part of her wanted it to be true. Fine, she said. Transfer it tonight. And Logan, if you're going to be in Mia's life, actually be in it. Don't just show up when it's convenient and disappear for weeks at a time. I won't. I'm getting things sorted out. I hope so, for her sake. They returned to the living room. Logan spent the last 20 minutes playing a card game Mia had invented with rules that made no sense, but which she defended passionately. At 4 o'clock exactly, Sarah reminded them it was time to get ready for dinner. Mia hugged Logan tightly. Will you come back next week? Absolutely. Promise? Logan thought about Isabella's words, about making it matter. I promise, he said. He took another Uber back to Isabella's house, arriving just after 5. The mansion was quiet, just one light burning in the kitchen. Logan found Isabella sitting at the island with her laptop, still wearing the same clothes from this morning, a mostly empty bottle of wine sitting next to her elbow. How'd it go? She asked without looking up. Good. She's good. Logan sat down across from her. Sarah reminded me I owe 3 months of child support. How much? $4,000, give or take. Isabella pulled out her phone, tapped a few buttons. Done. Check your account. Logan's phone buzzed. A notification from his bank showing a deposit of $5,000 with the memo. Audit completion bonus. Isabella, you can't just, I can and I did. You saved my company $800,000 in fraud and caught $15 million more before it sank us. That's worth a hell of a lot more than $5,000. She took a sip of wine. Pay your child support. See your daughter. Stop punishing yourself for things that are already done. Logan didn't know what to say. He stared at his phone, at numbers that would let him sleep tonight without wondering which bill would bounce tomorrow. Thank you, he said quietly. Isabella nodded, returning to her laptop. Margaret called, said you two made good progress on the documentation. We did. She's solid. You're lucky to have her. I know. Isabella closed the laptop, rubbing her eyes. Robert called too. The board meeting's set for 7 a.m. tomorrow. Full disclosure, no holding back. He said I should prepare for difficult questions. That's probably code for prepare to be fired. Yeah. Isabella poured herself another glass of wine, then seemed to think better of it and pushed the glass away. You want to know the worst part? What? I spent my entire 20s building this company. 70-hour weeks, no social life, no relationships that lasted longer than a few months. I told myself it would be worth it because I was creating something that mattered. And tomorrow, I'm going to walk into that boardroom and watch them take it all away because people I trusted were stealing from me. Her voice cracked slightly on the last word. Logan had never seen her like this. Not composed, not certain, just tired and human and scared. You could fight it, he said. Tell the board you won't resign. Make them force you out. And accomplish what? Drag the company through months of internal warfare while the stock tanks and employees start jumping ship? Isabella shook her head. If they want me gone, I'll go. At least that way the company has a chance. That's not fair. Life's not fair, Logan. You of all people should know that. They sat in silence for a while, the kitchen clock ticking steadily toward tomorrow. I'm going to bed, Isabella said finally. We should both get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be brutal. She left the bottle on the counter, half empty. Logan thought about finishing it, but decided he needed to be clear-headed more than he needed to be numb. He went upstairs, transferred the child support payment to Sarah, and stared at his depleted bank account. Even with Isabella's bonus, he was barely back to zero. One crisis solved, a dozen more waiting in the wings. His phone buzzed. Margaret. Margaret, you. Finish the documentation. It's as good as it's going to get. Whatever happens tomorrow, we did our best. Logan texted back. Good work. Get some sleep. Then he set an alarm for 5:30 and tried to convince himself that everything would be fine. He didn't believe it, but he set the alarm anyway. The alarm went off in what felt like minutes. Logan dressed in the dark, his best shirt and slacks, the outfit he'd worn to his father's funeral 3 years ago. He looked at himself in the bathroom mirror and saw a man who was tired of losing things. Isabella was already in the kitchen when he came down, dressed in a black suit that probably cost more than Logan made in a month. She looked every inch the CEO, polished, professional, untouchable. Coffee? She asked. Yeah. She poured 2 cups, handed him one. Her hands were steady, her expression calm. If she was terrified, she hid it perfectly. They drove to the office in silence. The city was still waking up, the sky that gray-blue color that comes just before sunrise. Logan watched the buildings slide past and thought about all the people inside them, sleeping or getting ready for work, completely unaware that in a few hours, a billion-dollar company might implode. The boardroom was already full when they arrived. Robert Chen sat at the head of the table, Margaret Yu to his right with her laptop open. The other board members occupied the remaining seats, 8 of them, all wearing expressions that ranged from concern to openly hostile. Isabella, Robert said. Logan, please, sit. They took their seats. Logan set his folder on the table, his documentation organized and ready, his heart hammered against his ribs. Robert cleared his throat. Let's begin. Isabella, you called this meeting to disclose financial irregularities. Walk us through what you found. Isabella stood, her posture perfect. Over the past 72 hours, we've uncovered 2 separate incidents of financial fraud within the company. The first involves our accounts payable system, where $847,000 was stolen through phantom vendor payments. The second involves our London office, where senior management inflated revenue by approximately $15 million over 6 quarters. The room erupted exactly like Logan had expected. 3 people started talking at once. 2 more were already typing on their phones, probably messaging their lawyers or the press or whoever board members messaged when companies caught fire. $15 million? Demanded Patricia Oakes, who ran a hedge fund and had been skeptical of Isabella from day one. How does that much money go missing without the CFO noticing? Margaret spoke up. The discrepancies were hidden within regional accounting variations. Our quarterly reviews focus on consolidated numbers, not regional breakdowns. Someone in London deliberately exploited that gap. And you expect us to believe Isabella had no knowledge of this? I expect you to look at the evidence. Isabella gestured to Logan. Logan Pierce, our senior analyst, uncovered both incidents while preparing for the external audit. Every piece of documentation shows the fraud was concealed from executive oversight. Robert turned to Logan. Is that accurate? Logan stood, his legs more stable than he'd expected. Yes, sir. The phantom vendor payments were approved at the VP level and scrubbed from the system before they appeared in consolidated reports. The London revenue inflation used subsidiaries and regional accounting protocols that wouldn't trigger flags in our standard reviews. Neither incident would have been visible to executive management unless someone specifically went looking for it. And why were you looking for it? Because I always look for it. That's my job. Patricia wasn't satisfied. This is convenient timing, Isabella, right before an external audit that might have found these issues anyway. How do we know you're not just trying to control the narrative? Because if I wanted to control the narrative, I would have found a way to bury this until after the audit cleared. Isabella's voice had gone cold. Instead, I'm disclosing it to you first, along with the names of everyone involved and documentation supporting immediate termination and criminal prosecution. The external auditors will see the same evidence you're seeing. They'll know we identified the problems ourselves and took corrective action. That doesn't change the fact that this happened under your watch, Patricia said. $15 million in fake revenue. Do you understand what that does to our credibility? I understand perfectly, which is why I'm prepared to resign if that's what the board decides is best for the company. The room went very quiet. Robert leaned back in his chair. Nobody's talking about resignations yet. What we need is a plan. How do we disclose this to the auditors without tanking the stock price? Margaret pulled up a presentation on the main screen. We've prepared a comprehensive remediation plan, immediate termination of all involved parties, criminal referrals to appropriate authorities, implementation of enhanced oversight protocols, and full cooperation with the external audit. We also recommend a voluntary disclosure to the SEC to get ahead of any regulatory concerns. That'll trigger an investigation, someone said. Yes, but a voluntary disclosure looks a lot better than the SEC finding out from the auditors or the press. They spent the next hour going through every detail, every question, every worst-case scenario. Logan presented his findings on Marcus Chen and the accounts payable fraud, walking the board through the evidence methodically. Then he presented the London findings, showing how the revenue inflation had been structured and concealed. By 8 o'clock, everyone looked exhausted. Robert called for a vote. All in favor of accepting the remediation plan as presented? 8 hands went up. Patricia's went up last, reluctantly. Motion carries. Robert turned to Isabella. You're not off the hook. The board will be monitoring this situation closely, and we'll be conducting our own independent review of executive oversight protocols. But for now, you stay in your position. Don't make us regret this. Isabella nodded. Understood. Good. The external auditors arrive at 9. Margaret, you'll be point person for their questions. Logan, you'll provide supporting documentation as needed. Isabella, you stay available, but let Margaret and Logan handle the day-to-day. We don't want the auditors thinking you're trying to influence their process. The board filed out, most of them still on their phones. Margaret started packing up her laptop, and Logan slumped in his chair, the adrenaline draining out of him all at once. Isabella stood by the window, looking out at the city. You did good work, Robert said to her before he left. Don't forget that. Then it was just the 3 of them, Isabella, Logan, and Margaret, in a boardroom that smelled like coffee and stress. Well, Margaret said, that could have gone worse. Yeah, Isabella agreed. Could have been fired instead of just put on probation. You weren't going to resign, were you? Logan asked. That was a bluff. Isabella smiled faintly. Doesn't matter. It worked. The external auditors arrived at 9:15, a team of 4 led by a woman named Catherine Ross, who looked like she'd been doing this since before Logan was born. She had gray hair pulled into a severe bun, reading glasses on a chain around her neck, and the kind of expression that said she'd seen every accounting trick in the book and wasn't impressed by any of them. Margaret met them in the main conference room, Logan and 3 other analysts providing support. Catherine set up camp at the head of the table, spreading out papers and laptops with the efficiency of someone who knew exactly what they were looking for. Let's start with your Q2 reconciliation, she said without preamble. I want to see every transaction over $50,000 with supporting documentation for each. They worked through lunch, Catherine asking questions that cut straight to the weak points in the documentation. She was good, scary good. Within 2 hours, she'd identified 3 transactions that needed additional clarification and one vendor payment that looked questionable until Logan pulled up the supporting contracts. Around 2 in the afternoon, Catherine leaned back in her chair. "You've been forthcoming with the fraud disclosures," she said. "That's appreciated. Makes our job easier when companies don't try to hide things." "We have no interest in hiding anything," Margaret said. "Good, because I'm going to need full access to your London office files, all of them, going back 3 years. You have it. Logan can walk you through the data structure." Logan spent the next hour showing Catherine how the London files were organized, where the discrepancies had been hidden, how they'd traced the fraud back to its source. She took notes in tiny, precise handwriting, occasionally asking questions that showed she understood financial systems better than most CFOs. "This is solid work," she said finally. "Whoever did this analysis knew what they were looking for." "That would be Logan," Margaret said. Catherine looked at him properly for the first time. "How long have you been doing forensic accounting?" "I don't. I'm just a financial analyst." "You should consider it. You've got the instinct for it." She closed her notebook. "We'll need another day to verify everything, but preliminary assessment is that your controls failed, but your detection and response were appropriate. That matters." Logan glanced at Margaret, who looked like someone had just told her she'd won the lottery. After Catherine and her team left for the day, Margaret pulled Logan aside. "She said appropriate," Margaret whispered. "Do you know what that means? That we're not completely screwed? That we might actually pass this audit?" She grabbed his shoulders. "Logan, if we pass this audit after everything that happened, Isabella keeps her job. The company survives. We all keep our jobs." "We're not there yet." "I know, but we're closer than we were this morning." Logan went looking for Isabella and found her in her office, staring at her computer screen without really seeing it. "How'd it go with the auditors?" she asked. "Good. Catherine Ross said our detection and response were appropriate." Isabella looked up. "Appropriate?" Her word, not mine. For the first time in days, Isabella smiled. Really smiled, not the tight professional expression she wore in meetings, but something genuine. "We might actually survive this," she said. "Yeah, we might." She stood, moving to the window. The city spread out below them, thousands of people going about their lives, completely unaware of the drama playing out 32 floors above. "Thank you," Isabella said quietly, "for not giving up, for finding all of this before it destroyed everything. I was just doing my job." "No, you went way beyond your job. You lived in your car for weeks rather than quit. You worked yourself half to death to find fraud that wasn't even your responsibility to find. That's not just doing a job, Logan. That's giving a damn." Logan didn't know what to say to that. "I talked to Robert after the board meeting," Isabella continued. "Asked him about creating a new position, Director of Financial Oversight, reporting directly to me. Someone whose entire job is making sure we never miss something like this again." "That makes sense. Margaret would be good for that." "I wasn't thinking of Margaret." Isabella turned to face him. "I was thinking of you." Logan stared at her. "I'm not qualified for a director position. You just uncovered $16 million in fraud and saved this company from collapse. I'd say you're qualified." "Isabella, it comes with a 40% raise, a real office, and benefits that actually matter. Health insurance, retirement matching, enough money that you never have to choose between seeing your daughter and paying rent." Logan's throat went tight. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you're good at what you do, because I trust you, and because I'm tired of watching talented people struggle while mediocre people coast." She moved closer. "Take the job, Logan. You've earned it." He wanted to argue, to point out all the reasons he wasn't ready for this kind of responsibility. But the truth was, he was tired of struggling, tired of barely surviving, tired of letting fear keep him small. "Okay," he said. "I'll take it." Isabella extended her hand. "Welcome to executive management." They shook, and Logan felt something shift, like he'd been holding his breath for years and finally remembered how to exhale. His phone buzzed, a text from Sarah. "Sarah, got the payment. Thank you." "Mia wants to know if you're coming next Sunday," Logan typed back immediately. "Logan, tell her yes, same time. I'll be there." This time he believed it. Tuesday morning arrived with Catherine Ross and her team settling back into the conference room like they owned it. Logan had barely slept, his mind running through every possible question they might ask, every gap in the documentation that could unravel everything they'd built. Margaret had beaten him to the office, already 3 coffees deep and looking like she'd memorized every transaction in the company's history. "They're going to want to see the termination paperwork for Marcus and Jennifer," she said without preamble. "And the criminal referral documentation. Make sure it's all time-stamped correctly." Logan pulled up the files on his laptop. "Already checked twice. Everything's dated before we disclose to the board." "Good." Catherine's assistant asked about the London managers, too. "We need to show we're not just scapegoating low-level employees. We fired 4 people, including the managing director. If that's not enough, it won't be. Not for them." Margaret rubbed her eyes. "They're going to push on why Isabella didn't catch this sooner, why our internal controls failed. We need better answers than 'we didn't know.'" Logan thought about the past 72 hours, about Isabella standing in the boardroom offering to resign, about the way her voice had cracked when she talked about losing everything she'd built. "The controls didn't fail," he said. "They were deliberately circumvented by people with elevated access and institutional knowledge. Isabella can't be expected to personally review every regional transaction." "Try telling that to Catherine." As if summoned, Catherine Ross appeared in the doorway. She wore the same severe expression as yesterday, her reading glasses already perched on her nose. "Good morning," she said. "Let's talk about your London office." They spent the next 4 hours walking through every transaction, every approval, every piece of documentation supporting the fraud timeline. Catherine asked questions that felt like surgical strikes, precise, targeted, designed to expose weakness. "This subsidiary here," she said, pointing at a transaction from March. "Phoenix Holdings Limited. Who approved the contract?" "James Whitmore, managing director of the London office," Logan said. "He was terminated Sunday morning along with 3 other senior managers." "And the payment authorization?" "Split between Whitmore and the regional CFO, David Patterson, also terminated." "Convenient that everyone involved is already gone." Margaret bristled. "We're not trying to hide anything. We documented everything before we made any terminations." "I'm sure you did," Catherine made a note. "But from an auditor's perspective, it's very clean, almost too clean. Every guilty party identified and removed before we could interview them." Logan felt something cold settle in his stomach. She thought they were setting up scapegoats, creating a narrative that protected Isabella by sacrificing everyone below her. "We have emails," he said. "Internal communications between Whitmore and Patterson discussing the revenue inflation. They knew exactly what they were doing." "Show me." Logan pulled up the email chain. Months of correspondence between the London managers discussing how to structure the fake revenue, how to time the transactions, how to keep it hidden from headquarters. Catherine read through them slowly, her expression unreadable. "These are damning," she said finally, "assuming they're authentic." "They are. You can verify the metadata yourself." "I will." Catherine closed her laptop. "Here's what I need for tomorrow. Complete access to your email servers, not just the curated documents you've provided. I want to see Isabella Hart's communications with the London office for the past 2 years. If she knew about this and you're trying to cover for her, I'll find it." Margaret's face went pale. "That's executive correspondence. There are confidentiality concerns of it. Then have your lawyers review what you give me. But I need those emails by end of business today, or this audit stops until I get them." Catherine stood. "One more thing. I want to interview Isabella directly. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., with full documentation of her oversight activities." After Catherine left, Margaret turned to Logan. "We're in trouble." "Why?" "Isabella didn't know about the London fraud." "You don't know that. None of us do. What if there's something in her emails that suggests she had questions about the numbers but didn't follow up? What if she saw a red flag and ignored it because she was too busy with other things?" "Then we deal with it," Logan said, though his confidence was mostly performance. "But we can't start assuming the worst." "I'm not assuming anything. I'm preparing for reality." Margaret pulled up Isabella's calendar. "She's been in back-to-back meetings for 6 months. Board presentations, investor calls, strategic planning. When exactly was she supposed to notice irregularities in regional accounting? That's the point. She was doing her job. The fraud happened below her level." Catherine's going to argue that it's Isabella's job to know what's happening below her level. That's what executive oversight means. Logan started going through Isabella's emails, cross-referencing them against the fraud timeline. Most of it was exactly what he expected. Board communications, strategic discussions, the endless administrative work of running a company. Nothing that suggested she knew about the London problems. But there was one email, dated April 12th, that made Logan pause. It was from Isabella to Margaret, asking about Q1 revenue numbers from London. Isabella Hart. London's growth looks aggressive compared to other regions. Do we have supporting documentation for the spike in new contracts? Margaret U. James Whitmore sent over the contract summaries. Everything checks out. The region landed 3 major clients in manufacturing. Isabella Hart. Okay, let's schedule a review call with their team next month to go over their pipeline. That call had never happened. Isabella's calendar showed it had been rescheduled twice, then canceled entirely when one of the board members demanded an emergency strategy session. Logan stared at the email thread. Isabella had asked the right question. She'd wanted more information, but she'd gotten distracted by other priorities, and the follow-up had fallen through the cracks. Was that negligence, or just the reality of being overwhelmed? He called Margaret over, showed her the email. This is bad, she said immediately. Catherine's going to say Isabella knew there was a problem and failed to investigate. She tried to investigate. The call got canceled because of board obligations, which she could have rescheduled, could have delegated, could have pushed harder. Margaret sat down heavily. Logan, this is exactly the kind of thing Catherine's looking for. Evidence that Isabella had warning signs and didn't act on them. What do we do? We include it in the documentation we send over. If we don't, and Catherine finds it herself, it looks like we were trying to hide it. That's going to hurt Isabella's position. Yeah, but lying to auditors hurts worse. Logan spent the rest of the afternoon compiling Isabella's emails, flagging the April exchange and 3 other instances where she'd asked questions about London's numbers. Each time, she'd received reassuring answers from Margaret or the London team. Each time, she'd been satisfied with the explanations and moved on. At 6, he printed everything and walked to Isabella's office. She was on a call when he arrived, pacing by the window while she talked someone through what sounded like a vendor negotiation. She gestured for Logan to sit, finishing the call with a crisp, "Make it happen," before hanging up. "Please tell me you have good news," she said. "Not exactly." Logan handed her the printouts. "Catherine wants access to all your emails with the London office. We found some exchanges that might be problematic." Isabella read through them, her expression tightening with each page. "I asked about the revenue spike," she said quietly. "I specifically asked for more information." "You did, but the follow-up call never happened." "Because Robert demanded that strategy session. We spent 2 weeks preparing for it." She set down the papers. "This makes me look incompetent." "It makes you look like someone juggling impossible priorities. Catherine might not see it that way, but that doesn't mean—" "Logan," Isabella cut him off. "I appreciate what you're trying to do, but let's not pretend this doesn't look bad. I had questions. I didn't follow through. People will say that's exactly why this happened. People will also say you disclosed everything voluntarily and took immediate corrective action. That counts for something." "Does it?" Isabella moved to the window, staring out at the city lights beginning to glow in the dusk. "Or am I just delaying the inevitable?" Logan didn't have a good answer for that. They worked late into the evening preparing for Isabella's interview with Catherine. Logan helped her build a timeline of her oversight activities, documentation showing the hundreds of decisions she made weekly, the impossible volume of information she was expected to process. Around 9, Isabella ordered dinner from the Thai place down the street. They ate in her office, the silence stretching between them until Isabella finally spoke. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you think I failed as a leader?" Logan set down his fork. "No. Don't just tell me what I want to hear." "I'm not." He met her eyes. "You inherited a company built on systems designed decades ago. You've been trying to modernize while keeping everyone employed and profitable. That's not failure. That's an impossible job that you've been doing better than most people could. But I missed this. I missed $15 million being stolen right under my nose. So did everyone else. So did the external auditors last year. So did the board during their quarterly reviews. Logan leaned forward. You're not responsible for everything that happens in a company with 12,000 employees. You're responsible for how you respond when things go wrong. And your response has been to expose it, fix it, and take responsibility. That's leadership. Isabella was quiet for a long moment. You're good at this. At what? Saying the right thing when people are falling apart. I've had practice. I spent 5 years falling apart. You pick up some perspective. She smiled faintly. How's Mia? Good. I'm seeing her again Sunday. That's good. You should bring her here sometime, if Sarah's okay with it. There's a whole yard that never gets used. Logan tried to imagine Mia running around Isabella's mansion, playing on grass that probably costs more to maintain than his rent used to be. She'd love that, he said. They finished eating and went back to work. At midnight, Isabella finally closed her laptop. Go home, she said. Get some sleep. We need to be sharp tomorrow. This is home, Logan said without thinking. Isabella looked at him strangely. You know you can find an apartment now, right? You have money. You don't have to stay in the guest room. I know. Logan struggled to articulate it. It's been nice, not being alone. Something shifted in Isabella's expression. Yeah, it has been. She stood, gathering her things. Come on. I'll make tea. We can both pretend we're going to sleep instead of lying awake worrying. They sat in her kitchen until almost 2 a.m, drinking chamomile tea that didn't help and talking about everything except the audit. Isabella told him about her father, about the impossible standards he'd set, and the weight of living up to a legacy she'd never asked for. Logan told her about Mia, about missing her first day of school because he'd been working on a merger analysis that didn't matter nearly as much as being there. We're both pretty bad at having lives outside of work, Isabella said. Probably why we're good at the work. Or why the work is all we have left. Logan thought about that. About how he'd let his marriage fall apart because he couldn't turn off his brain long enough to just be present. About how Isabella lived in a mansion built for a family, but came home to empty rooms every night. Maybe we should fix that, he said. How? I don't know. Take weekends off. Have dinner at reasonable hours. Remember that we're people, not just employees. Isabella laughed, but it sounded sad. You say that like it's easy. It's not, but maybe it's worth trying anyway. She didn't respond to that, just finished her tea and rinsed the cup in the sink. See you tomorrow, she said. Try to get some sleep. Logan went upstairs but didn't sleep. He lay in the guest bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about the interview tomorrow, about Catherine's questions, about the email thread that proved Isabella had asked questions but hadn't pushed hard enough for answers. At 7 the next morning, Logan found Isabella in the kitchen, already dressed in another severe suit, her hair pulled back tight. Ready? He asked. No, but we're doing it anyway. They drove to the office in tense silence. Catherine was already in the conference room, her team setting up recording equipment and document cameras like they were preparing for a deposition. Margaret met them at the door. Everything's ready. I'll be in there with you for support. Isabella nodded, her face calm and composed. Logan watched her transform from the person who'd stayed up talking about life regrets to the CEO who commanded boardrooms. It was like watching someone put on armor. Catherine gestured to the chair across from her. Ms. Hart, thank you for making time. Of course. Isabella sat, her posture perfect. I want to cooperate fully with this audit. Good. Let's start with your oversight of the London office. Walk me through your typical interaction with regional management. Isabella described the monthly reviews, the quarterly presentations, the strategic planning sessions. She was precise, detailed, professional. Catherine took notes, her expression neutral. You received financial reports from London every month, Catherine said. Correct? Yes. And these reports showed significant revenue growth over the past 6 quarters. They did. Did that growth concern you? Isabella didn't hesitate. It raised questions. The growth was faster than other regions, but James Whitmore attributed it to successful client acquisition. When I asked for supporting documentation, he provided contract summaries that appeared legitimate. But you never verified those contracts independently. No, that's the CFO's responsibility, not mine. Catherine glanced at Margaret. Ms. Yu, did you verify the London contracts? Margaret shifted slightly. I reviewed the summaries Mr. Whitmore provided. They appeared consistent with our standard contract structure. But you didn't contact the clients directly to confirm the contracts existed. No, we don't typically verify every regional contract. We sample contracts during quarterly reviews. And the London contracts never appeared in your sample. They did not. Catherine made another note. Ms. Hart, I'm looking at an email you sent on April 12th to Ms. Yu. You expressed concern about London's aggressive growth and requested a review call with their team. That call never happened. Why not? Isabella's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Board obligations took priority. The call was rescheduled twice and eventually canceled. But you never followed up later. No. Why not? Because I received assurances from both my CFO and the London managing director that the growth was legitimate. I trusted their judgment. Even though you had concerns, I had questions. They were answered. At the time, that was sufficient. Catherine leaned back in her chair. Ms. Hart, I've reviewed your calendar for the past year. You work 80 to 90 hours a week. You're in constant meetings, constant communication, constantly making decisions. Would you say that pace is sustainable? Isabella's expression didn't change. It's necessary. Is it? Or does it create an environment where things fall through the cracks? Where you ask important questions but don't have time to pursue the answers? I pursue answers when the initial response is inadequate. And in this case? In this case, I received responses that appeared adequate at the time. In hindsight, I should have pushed harder. Logan watched the exchange, saw how Catherine was building her case. Not that Isabella was malicious or deliberately negligent, but that she was overwhelmed and disorganized, that the company had grown beyond her ability to manage it effectively. Let me ask you directly, Catherine said. Do you believe you provided adequate oversight of the London office? Isabella met her eyes. I believe I did what I could with the information available to me. If you're asking whether I could have done more, the answer is always yes. But that's true of any executive at any company. The question is whether I met the reasonable standard of oversight for someone in my position. I believe I did. Even though $15 million in fraudulent revenue went undetected for 18 months. Even though, yes. The room was silent. Catherine closed her notebook. Thank you, Ms. Hart. That's all I need for now. I may have follow-up questions as we complete our review. Isabella stood, shook Catherine's hand, and walked out with her head high. But Logan saw her hands trembling slightly as she pressed the elevator button. They rode down in silence. Margaret got off on the 15th floor, leaving Logan and Isabella alone. That was brutal, Isabella said quietly. You handled it well. I basically admitted I failed at my job. No, you admitted you're human. There's a difference. The elevator doors opened. Isabella stepped out, then turned back. Logan, can you do me a favor? Anything. If Catherine's report recommends my removal, I want you to support it. What? No, absolutely not. I'm serious. If the auditors think the company needs new leadership, don't fight it. The company matters more than my ego. Isabella, promise me. Logan looked at her, at the exhaustion in her eyes, at the weight she'd been carrying for so long. I promise, he lied. She nodded and walked away. Logan spent the rest of the day with Catherine's team, providing documentation and answering technical questions about the fraud detection process. Around 4, Catherine pulled him aside. You did good work uncovering this, she said. The documentation is thorough, the timeline is clear. From a technical standpoint, this is a model response to discovered fraud. But, Logan heard the word hanging in the air. But the fact that it took an analyst working off the books to find it raises questions about the effectiveness of your executive oversight. Ms. Hart is brilliant, hardworking, and clearly dedicated to this company. But dedication isn't the same as capability. She's capable. At running a $500 million company? Absolutely. At running a $1 billion multinational with complex regional operations? I'm not convinced. Catherine softened slightly. This isn't personal. It's an assessment of structural fit. Sometimes good people are in positions that have outgrown them. Logan wanted to argue, to defend Isabella, to point out everything she'd built and saved and sacrificed. But Catherine was already moving on to her next question, and the moment passed. That evening, Logan found Isabella in her office staring at her computer screen. The building was mostly empty, just the cleaning crew making their rounds. "Catherine talked to me," Logan said. "And?" "She thinks you're good, but maybe not right for the job anymore." Isabella laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Well, at least she's polite about it." "I told her she was wrong." "Was she?" Logan sat down across from her. "You built this company from near bankruptcy to a billion-dollar operation. You did that in 4 years while dealing with a board that questioned every decision and investors who wanted to sell for parts. You're exactly right for this job. That was before I let $15 million disappear." "You didn't let anything disappear. Someone stole it." "That's not the same thing." Isabella closed her laptop. "You know what the worst part is? Part of me is relieved. Like maybe if they fire me, I can finally stop pretending I have everything under control." "You don't have to pretend. Not with me." She looked at him, and for a moment Logan saw past the CEO, past the armor, to the person underneath who was just as scared and uncertain as he'd been sleeping in his car. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For everything. For finding the fraud, for helping with the audit, for not giving up even when I wanted to. You never wanted to give up." "Yes, I did. Multiple times. But I couldn't because you were still working, still fighting, still believing it mattered. So I had to believe it too." Logan didn't know what to say to that. His phone buzzed. A text from Margaret. "Margaret, you. Catherine just sent her preliminary findings to the board. Meeting tomorrow, 8 a.m. Be there." Logan showed Isabella the message. "Tomorrow," she said. "We find out if I still have a job." They drove home in silence. Isabella made dinner while Logan set the table, a routine that had become comfortable over the past week. They ate without talking much, both lost in their own thoughts about what tomorrow might bring. Around 10, Logan's phone rang. Sarah. He stepped into the hallway to answer. "Hey," he said. "Everything okay?" "Mia wanted to talk to you. Hold on." There was rustling, then his daughter's voice. "Daddy?" "Hey, kiddo, you're up late." "I couldn't sleep. Are you coming on Sunday?" "Absolutely." "Promise?" Logan thought about everything hanging in the balance tomorrow, about how easily promises could break when circumstances changed. "I promise," he said anyway. "Nothing's going to stop me." "Okay. Love you." "Love you too, baby." Sarah came back on the line. "She's been better since you started visiting regularly again. More settled." "Yeah?" "Yeah, don't mess it up, Logan." "I won't." After he hung up, Logan found Isabella in the living room with a glass of wine. "Mia?" she asked. "Yeah, just wanted to make sure I was coming Sunday." "You should bring her here. I meant what I said about the yard." Logan sat down on the couch. "Why are you being so nice to me?" Isabella looked surprised. "What kind of question is that?" "A legitimate one. You gave me a place to stay, a promotion, money to pay my child support. You barely knew me." "I knew you well enough. You'd been working for me for 3 years. But we'd never really talked before all this. I was just another analyst." Isabella was quiet for a moment, swirling wine in her glass. "You want the honest answer?" she said finally. "Yeah. Because when I found you in your car that night, I saw myself. Not the CEO version. The version that existed before I learned to hide everything behind boardroom armor. You were broken and exhausted and still working because the work mattered more than your own comfort. I've spent the last 4 years being that person, and everybody told me it was strength. But when I saw you doing it, I realized it wasn't strength. It was desperation." She took a sip of wine. "I couldn't save myself from that," Isabella continued. "But I could save you. So I did." Logan felt something shift in his chest. "You did save me. You know that, right? I gave you a room and a paycheck. You saved yourself." "That's not true." "Isn't it? I gave you an opportunity. You're the one who seized it, who found the fraud, who kept fighting even when everything was falling apart. That was all you." They sat in silence for a while, the weight of the past week settling around them. "What happens tomorrow?" Logan asked. "If the board fires you?" "Then I pack my office and figure out what comes next. And if they don't?" "Then I keep trying to build something that matters, same as always." Logan looked at her, really looked at her, and saw someone who'd spent so long being strong that she'd forgotten how to ask for help. Someone who'd convinced herself that leadership meant carrying everything alone. "You don't have to do it by yourself anymore," he said. "Whatever happens tomorrow, you've got people who believe in you. Margaret, Robert Chen, me. We're not going anywhere." Isabella's eyes went bright, and for a second Logan thought she might cry. But she blinked it away, took another sip of wine, and smiled. "You're a good person, Logan Pierce." "So are you, Isabella Hart." They finished their wine and went to bed, both pretending they'd actually sleep instead of lying awake counting down the hours until morning. Logan's alarm went off at 6. He'd been awake since 4, staring at the ceiling and running through every possible outcome of the board meeting. By the time he dragged himself downstairs, Isabella was already in the kitchen, wearing the same black suit from yesterday's interview with Catherine. She looked like she hadn't slept either. "Coffee?" she asked, holding up the pot. "Yeah." They drank in silence, both avoiding the obvious conversation about what might happen in the next 2 hours. Logan checked his phone. No messages. No last-minute warnings or updates from Margaret. "We should go," Isabella said finally. "Traffic's going to be hell." The drive took 40 minutes, neither of them speaking. Logan watched the city wake up around them, people heading to jobs they'd show up to again tomorrow, lives that weren't hanging by a thread. He envied them. Margaret met them in the lobby, looking worse than either of them. Her suit was wrinkled, her hair pulled back hastily, dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. "Catherine submitted her final report at 6 this morning," she said without preamble. "Robert called an emergency session. The whole board's already upstairs." "Did you see the report?" Isabella asked. "No, but David in legal said it's comprehensive, whatever that means." They rode the elevator up in tense silence. The boardroom was already full when they arrived, every seat occupied, the atmosphere thick enough to cut. Robert Chen sat at the head of the table with a leather portfolio in front of him. Catherine Ross sat to his right, her expression professionally neutral. "Isabella," Robert said. "Logan, Margaret, please sit." They took their seats. Logan's heart hammered so hard he could feel it in his throat. Robert opened the portfolio, pulling out a bound report that had to be at least 50 pages. "Catherine and her team have completed their audit. Before we discuss her findings, I want to thank everyone for their cooperation during what I know has been a challenging week." He put on his reading glasses, a gesture that somehow made everything feel more final. "The audit identified significant control failures at both the executive and regional levels," Robert continued. "Specifically, inadequate oversight of international operations, insufficient verification protocols for large transactions, and a general lack of redundancy in financial review processes." Isabella's face remained perfectly still, but Logan saw her hands clench under the table. "However," Robert said, and Logan felt something in his chest loosen slightly at that word. "The audit also found that upon discovery of the fraud, executive management responded appropriately and decisively. The self-disclosure, the immediate terminations, and the comprehensive remediation plan all demonstrate a commitment to transparency and accountability." He looked directly at Isabella. "Catherine, would you walk us through your specific findings regarding executive oversight?" Catherine stood, pulling up a presentation on the main screen. Logan recognized some of his own documentation in her slides. "Our review of Ms. Hart's communications and activities shows that she maintained regular contact with regional management, requested detailed financial reports, and asked appropriate questions when numbers appeared unusual," Catherine said. "On 3 separate occasions, she specifically raised concerns about the London office's revenue growth." She clicked to the next slide, showing the April email exchange. In each case, Ms. Hart was provided with explanations by either the CFO or regional management that appeared reasonable at the time. She requested additional verification but was unable to follow through due to competing priorities and assurances from senior staff that the numbers were legitimate. Patricia Oakes leaned forward. "So you're saying Isabella did her job?" "I'm saying Ms. Hart performed her oversight duties within the reasonable expectations for a CEO of a company this size. Could she have done more? Perhaps. But the failure here wasn't at the executive level. It was at the regional management level, where individuals with institutional knowledge deliberately exploited gaps in our verification protocols." Catherine clicked to another slide. "The more concerning finding is structural," she continued. This company has grown significantly over the past 4 years, but your internal controls haven't scaled accordingly. You're still operating with oversight systems designed for a $500 million operation, not a billion-dollar multinational. That's not sustainable. What are you recommending? Robert asked. A complete overhaul of financial controls, including mandatory third-party verification of all contracts over $100,000, quarterly independent audits of regional operations, and the creation of a dedicated oversight position reporting directly to the CEO. Logan felt Isabella glance at him. This will be expensive and time-consuming, Catherine said, but it's necessary if you want to prevent this from happening again. The good news is that the fraud has been contained, appropriate parties have been held accountable, and your current executive team has demonstrated the capacity to handle a crisis effectively. She sat down. Robert looked around the table. Questions for Catherine before we move to discussion? Patricia raised her hand. These structural changes you're recommending, can they be implemented while maintaining current leadership? Or do we need to bring in someone with more experience managing complex international operations? The room went silent. Everyone knew she was asking whether Isabella should be replaced. Catherine considered the question. That's a board decision, not an auditor's call. What I can tell you is that Ms. Hart has shown good judgment during this crisis. Whether she has the bandwidth to implement major structural changes while continuing to run day-to-day operations is something you'll need to assess. Thank you, Patricia said, though her tone suggested she'd already made up her mind. Robert dismissed Catherine and her team. As soon as the door closed behind them, the real conversation started. I'll be direct, Patricia said. I think we need to seriously consider bringing in new leadership. Isabella's done admirable work, but this company has outgrown her capabilities. That's premature, said Michael Torres, who ran a venture capital firm and had always supported Isabella. She caught the fraud, disclosed it voluntarily, and handled the audit better than most CEOs would have. That's exactly the kind of leadership we need. She caught it because her analyst was living in his car and working around the clock, Patricia shot back. That's not a sustainable oversight model. What happens when Logan burns out? When the next crisis comes and we don't have someone willing to sacrifice their personal life to save us? Logan felt his face heat up. She was using him as evidence against Isabella. With respect, Margaret said carefully, the structural problems Catherine identified existed long before Isabella became CEO. She inherited a company with inadequate controls and has been working to modernize them while maintaining profitability. That's not failure. That's exactly what we hired her to do. Then why did it take a crisis to force those changes? Patricia demanded. Because boards don't approve expensive overhauls when everything appears to be working fine, Robert said quietly. I've been on this board for 12 years. Every time someone proposed upgrading our financial controls, we rejected it because it wasn't in the budget. We prioritized growth over infrastructure. That's on all of us, not just Isabella. Patricia didn't have a response to that. Robert turned to Isabella. What do you think? Can you implement Catherine's recommendations while continuing to run the company? Isabella had been silent through the entire discussion, her face unreadable. Now she straightened in her chair, and Logan saw the CEO emerge again. Honestly? I don't know, she said. The structural changes Catherine outlined are massive. They'll require months of implementation, significant capital investment, and complete restructuring of how we handle regional operations. Can I do that while also managing day-to-day operations, investor relations, and strategic planning? Maybe, but it would be difficult. So you're saying we should replace you? Patricia asked. I'm saying you should do what's best for the company. If that means bringing in someone with more experience managing large-scale organizational change, I'll support that decision. If you think I can handle it, I'll do everything in my power to make it work. Either way, the company comes first. The room was quiet for a long moment. Then Robert spoke. I propose we give Isabella 6 months to implement phase 1 of the structural changes. We bring in a COO to handle day-to-day operations, freeing Isabella to focus on the controls overhaul. At the 6-month mark, we reassess. If progress is satisfactory, Isabella stays on. If not, we revisit leadership options. Who would the COO be? Someone asked. Robert looked at Logan. I'd like to nominate Logan Pierce. Logan's brain stopped working. What? You've demonstrated exceptional judgment during this crisis. You found the fraud, You built the remediation plan. You know this company's operations better than anyone. Isabella trusts you, which matters. And frankly, we need someone in that role who isn't afraid to tell us when something's wrong. Robert, I'm not qualified for COO, Logan said, his voice rough. I'm an analyst. I've never managed operations. Neither was I when I took my first executive role, Robert said. You learn. Besides, the job isn't about knowing everything. It's about knowing what questions to ask and who to ask them to. You're already doing that. Isabella turned to Logan. It's your choice, but for what it's worth, I think you'd be good at it. Logan looked around the table at faces that represented billions in collective wealth and decades of experience and tried to process what was happening. A week ago, he'd been sleeping in his car. Now they wanted him to be chief operating officer of a billion-dollar company. Can I think about it? He asked. You have until Monday, Robert said. We need someone in place before we announce the structural changes publicly. The vote on Robert's proposal passed 7-1, Patricia the only dissent. The meeting adjourned, board members filing out in small clusters, already on their phones. Isabella walked out without looking at anyone. Logan followed her to her office. She closed the door behind them and immediately sank into her chair, the professional composure finally cracking. That was hell, she said. You did good. I almost got fired. But you didn't. And they're giving you the chance to fix this. Isabella laughed, but it sounded exhausted. They're putting me on probation while bringing in someone to do half my job. That's not exactly a vote of confidence. It's not a vote of no confidence either. They could have replaced you entirely. Only because you found the fraud before the auditors did. If you hadn't been working in your car that night, she trailed off. I owe you everything, Logan. You don't owe me anything. We did this together. Isabella looked at him, something vulnerable flickering across her face. Are you going to take it, the COO position? I don't know. It feels like too much too fast. It is too much, but you can handle it. How do you know? Because you've been handling impossible things since the moment I met you. This is just a different kind of impossible. Logan sat down across from her. What if I screw it up? Then you'll fix it, same as you fixed everything else. Isabella leaned forward. Look, I can't make this decision for you, but I can tell you that I need someone I trust in that role. Someone who'll tell me when I'm wrong, who'll catch things I miss, who'll care about getting it right more than looking good. That's you, Logan. It's always been you. His phone buzzed, a text from Sarah. Sarah, Mia made you a picture. She wants to give it to you on Sunday. Don't be late. Logan showed Isabella the message. You have a life outside of work now, she said. A daughter who needs you. Are you sure you want to take on more responsibility? The COO job comes with better hours than what I've been working. Robert said so himself. It's about delegation and oversight, not doing everything yourself. In theory, Logan agreed. But maybe that's the point. Maybe we both need to learn how to not do everything ourselves. Isabella smiled, a real one this time. When did you get wise? Around the time I started sleeping in a bed instead of a car. Proper sleep does wonders. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. I should call Robert, Logan said. Let him know my answer. Which is? Logan thought about Mia, about the picture she'd made him, about Sunday afternoons that he wouldn't miss anymore because he couldn't afford gas. He thought about Isabella working 80-hour weeks and slowly burning out. He thought about the company, about 12,000 employees whose livelihoods depended on getting this right. Yeah, he said, I'll take it. Isabella's smile widened. Good, because I already told facilities to set up an office for you on the executive floor. You did not. I did, right next to mine. We're going to be spending a lot of time together over the next 6 months. Logan called Robert from Isabella's office, accepting the position officially. Robert sounded pleased, said he'd have HR draw up the paperwork by end of day. They'd announce it Monday, along with the structural changes. One more thing, Robert said before hanging up. Your compensation package includes stock options and a signing bonus. HR will go over the details, but I wanted you to know the board appreciates what you've done here. After he hung up, Logan just sat there, trying to process it all. You okay? Isabella asked. I'm not sure. This doesn't feel real. It's real. Welcome to executive management. It's exactly as terrible as everyone says. That's not a great sales pitch. I'm not trying to sell you on it. You already said yes. Isabella stood, moving to the window. Come here. I want to show you something. Logan joined her. From this high up, the city spread out in every direction. Thousands of buildings filled with millions of people all trying to build something that mattered. When my father was dying, Isabella said quietly, he brought me up here. Told me that this was the view that kept him going on hard days. All those people down there counting on decisions we make in this building. He said it was terrifying and humbling and the only thing worth doing. She turned to look at Logan. I didn't understand what he meant then. I thought leadership was about being smart enough and strong enough to handle everything, but it's not. It's about knowing you can't handle everything alone and finding people you trust to help carry the weight. Is that what this is? You finding someone to help carry the weight? No, this is me realizing I should have done that 3 years ago instead of trying to prove I could do it all myself. Logan's phone rang. Sarah again. Take it, Isabella said. I need to make some calls anyway. Logan answered, stepping into the hallway. Hey, Sarah said. I know this is short notice, but Eric's sister is in town this weekend. We're doing a family thing Saturday. Would you want to take Mia for the whole day Sunday instead of just a couple hours? Logan felt something warm spread through his chest. Yeah, absolutely. What time? I can drop her off at 9 if that works. That works. I'll text you the address. Whose address? I thought you were staying at a hotel. Logan hesitated. I'm staying with a friend. It's temporary. A friend with a house nice enough that you're comfortable having Mia there? Yeah. Sarah was quiet for a moment. You're doing better, aren't you? I can hear it in your voice. I'm trying. Good. Mia deserves that. You both do. After they hung up, Logan found Isabella in her office on a call with the London office's interim management team. She'd already moved on to the next crisis, the next decision, the next impossible thing that needed handling. He went to his desk, his old desk in the analyst bullpen, and started packing up his things. 3 years of work compressed into a single box. Financial models, audit reports, documentation that had seemed so important at the time. Margaret appeared in his cubicle doorway. Heard you're moving up in the world? Something like that. Good. You deserve it. She handed him a folder. These are the preliminary cost estimates for implementing Catherine's recommendations. Thought you'd want to see them before the board presentation Monday. Logan flipped through the numbers. 20 million over 18 months, plus ongoing annual costs of around 5 million for the enhanced verification protocols. This is going to be a hard sell, he said. Cheaper than another fraud scandal, and way cheaper than an SEC investigation. Margaret sat on the edge of his desk. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why'd you keep working when you lost your apartment? You could have quit, found something easier, started over somewhere else. Logan thought about it. Because quitting would have meant admitting I'd failed. And I'd already failed at enough things. My marriage, my relationship with my daughter, basic adulting. This was the one thing I was still good at. You're good at more than spreadsheets, Logan. I'm starting to figure that out. He finished packing and carried the box up to his new office. It was smaller than Isabella's, but still 3 times the size of his cubicle, with an actual window and a door that closed. Someone had already put his name on a placard outside. Logan Pierce, Chief Operating Officer. It still didn't feel real. He spent the rest of the day in meetings with HR, going over his contract, his compensation package, his benefits. The numbers were staggering. Base salary of $300,000, performance bonuses that could double that, stock options that would vest over 4 years. Health insurance that actually covered things, retirement matching at 6%. You'll also get a company car, the HR director said. You can pick from the approved list or request something specific within budget. Logan almost laughed. A week ago, he'd lost his car to an impound lot. Now the company was giving him one. That evening, he found Isabella still in her office, surrounded by spreadsheets and strategic planning documents. You should go home, Logan said. I will, soon. Isabella. She looked up. I'm fine. Just trying to figure out how to tell investors that we're spending $20 million to fix problems they didn't know we had. Tell them we're investing in infrastructure to support continued growth. Make it sound like opportunity, not damage control. That's good. See, you're already thinking like an executive. Logan sat down. Can I ask you something personal? Go ahead. Why do you live in that huge house alone? Isabella was quiet for a moment. Because my father built it for a family he never quite had time to enjoy. My mother moved out 6 months after he died, said the place had too many memories. I stayed because I thought I owed it to him. Thought if I could make the company successful enough, it would somehow justify all the time he spent away from us. Did it work? No. Turns out success doesn't fix grief. It just gives you something to do instead of feeling it. Logan understood that better than he wanted to. Come on, he said. Let's get out of here. We can order pizza and work from home if you really need to work. They drove back to the mansion as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Isabella ordered pizza with everything on it, and they spread out in her living room with laptops and documents, working in comfortable silence. Around 9, Logan's phone buzzed with an email from HR. His official contract, ready to sign. He read through it carefully, making sure everything matched what they'd discussed. At the bottom was a start date, Monday, 3 days from now. He signed it and sent it back. Done? Isabella asked. Done? How does it feel? Terrifying. Good. You should be terrified. That means you're taking it seriously. She closed her laptop. I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to be honest. Okay? Are you staying at the house because you need to, or because you want to? Logan thought about that. He had money now. He could afford an apartment, could move out tomorrow if he wanted. But the truth was, he didn't want to. Both, he said. I could find a place, but I like being here. It's been nice having someone around. Makes the house feel less empty. Isabella nodded slowly. I've been thinking the same thing. This place is too big for one person, too quiet. And the past couple weeks, having you here, she trailed off. It's felt more like a home than it has in years. So what are you saying? I'm saying you should stay, not as temporary emergency housing, but because you live here. We can figure out rent or whatever makes sense, but I don't want you to leave just because you can afford to. Logan felt something settle in his chest. You sure? I'm sure. Besides, Mia's coming over Sunday. She'll love the yard. Might as well make it official. They shook hands on it, sealing the arrangement with pizza grease and laughter. Saturday passed in a blur of preparation. Logan helped Isabella draft the investor communication about the structural changes, practiced his presentation for Monday's board meeting, and tried not to think too hard about the fact that his entire life had transformed in less than 2 weeks. Sunday morning, Sarah dropped Mia off at 9 sharp. Logan watched through the window as his daughter climbed out of the car, clutching a rolled-up piece of paper and looking around at the mansion with wide eyes. Sarah got out too, clearly wanting to see where her daughter would be spending the day. Logan met them at the door. Hey kiddo, ready to hang out? Daddy, you live in a castle, Mia exclaimed. It's not a castle, just a big house. Sarah looked past him, taking in the marble foyer, the sweeping staircase, the chandelier that probably cost more than her car. A friend's house? She said quietly. Logan, what's going on? I got promoted, and my boss offered to let me stay here while I figure things out. Your boss? Sarah's eyes narrowed. The one who's been paying you bonuses? Sarah, is this why you suddenly have money? Because you're living with your boss? Logan felt his face heat up. It's not like that. Isabella's just helping me get back on my feet. Isabella? Sarah crossed her arms. And she just happens to live in a mansion and give you money and let you stay here out of the goodness of her heart? Mommy, look what I made, Mia interrupted, unrolling her picture. It showed 3 stick figures holding hands, one labeled Daddy, one labeled Mia, and one labeled Mommy. Logan's heart cracked a little. Sarah softened, seeing the picture. That's beautiful, baby. I want Daddy to have it so he remembers us when he's working. I could never forget you, Logan said, taking the picture carefully. This is going up in my new office. You have an office? A big one, with a window and everything. Mia beamed. Sarah still looked skeptical, but she let it go. I'll pick her up at 6, Sarah said. Please don't let her eat only junk food. I won't. After Sarah left, Mia grabbed Logan's hand. Can I see your room? Sure, come on. He showed her the guest room, his room now, apparently. and let her bounce on the bed while he hung her picture on the wall where he'd see it every morning. "Daddy? Yeah? Are you going to live here forever?" "I don't know, kiddo. Maybe for a while. I like it here. It's big. It is big. Can we play outside?" Logan took her out to the yard where she ran in circles for 20 minutes just because she could. Isabella appeared on the back patio with lemonade and snacks, watching them with a soft expression. "She's beautiful," Isabella said when Mia was distracted picking flowers. "Yeah, she is." "She has your eyes." Logan looked at his daughter, laughing as she tried to catch a butterfly, and felt something tight and painful in his chest loosen. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for all of this, for giving me a chance to be her dad again. You were always her dad. You just needed help remembering that." They spent the afternoon in the yard, Mia making up elaborate games that involved running and hiding and dramatic storytelling. Isabella joined in without hesitation, letting Mia boss her around with the authority only 7-year-olds possessed. Around 4, they went inside for snacks. Mia sat at the kitchen island eating apple slices and asking Isabella a million questions about the house, the pool, whether there were secret passages. "No secret passages," Isabella said, "but there is a library upstairs with a really tall ladder." "Can I see?" "If your dad says it's okay." They spent an hour in the library, Mia climbing the ladder while Logan spotted her and Isabella pulled down books about dinosaurs and space and whatever else caught Mia's attention. At 6, Sarah returned. Mia didn't want to leave, which felt like both a victory and a heartbreak. "Next week?" Mia asked, hugging Logan tight. "Next week. I promise." After they left, Logan and Isabella stood in the foyer, the house suddenly too quiet again. "She's great," Isabella said. "She is. You're good with her. Natural." Logan thought about all the bedtimes he'd missed, all the school events and sick days and ordinary moments he'd let work steal from him. "I'm trying to be better," he said. "She deserves better." "You both do." They ordered Chinese food for dinner, eating straight from the containers while reviewing Monday's presentations one more time. Logan felt nervous about the board meeting, about stepping into a role he still wasn't sure he was qualified for. "You're going to be fine," Isabella said, reading his expression. "You know the material, you know what needs to happen. Just be honest and direct. That's all they want. What if they ask questions I can't answer? Then you say you'll find out and get back to them. That's what executives do, Logan. Nobody knows everything." Monday morning arrived cold and clear. Logan dressed in a new suit he'd bought over the weekend, the first suit he'd owned that actually fit properly. He looked at himself in the mirror and barely recognized the man looking back. 2 weeks ago, he'd been sleeping in his car. Today, he was the COO of a billion-dollar company. The board meeting went better than expected. Robert presented the structural changes, framing them exactly how Logan had suggested, as investment in infrastructure, not damage control. The stock took a minor hit when they announced it publicly, but nothing catastrophic. Analysts called it a responsible move. Logan's appointment as COO was announced the same day. His inbox immediately flooded with congratulations from colleagues, questions from department heads, and meeting requests from people who suddenly wanted his time. Margaret stopped by his new office around 3 with a bottle of champagne. "For surviving your first day as an executive," she said. "It's not even over yet." "Close enough." She set the bottle on his desk. "Seriously, though, congratulations. You earned this." "I feel like I'm faking it." "Everyone feels like that. The trick is faking it well enough that nobody notices." Over the next few weeks, Logan settled into his new role. It was overwhelming and exhausting and completely different from anything he'd done before. But Isabella was right. It wasn't about knowing everything. It was about asking the right questions and trusting people to help find the answers. He started delegating, hired a team of analysts to handle the detailed financial work he used to do himself, created systems and processes that didn't depend on one person working 80-hour weeks, slowly, painfully learned how to leave the office before 8 p.m. He saw Mia every Sunday without fail. Sarah gradually warmed up to the arrangement, especially when she saw how consistent Logan was being. He started taking Mia to the mansion regularly, and she claimed the yard as her personal kingdom. 3 months into the structural changes, Catherine Ross came back for a follow-up review. She spent 2 days going through their new protocols, testing the verification systems, interviewing staff about the changes. Her final assessment was cautiously optimistic. You're making progress. The controls are significantly stronger than they were. If you maintain this trajectory, you'll be in good shape for the next full audit. The board voted to extend Isabella's probation period to the full 6 months, but indicated they were pleased with the progress. Patricia Oakes abstained from the vote, but didn't actively oppose it, which felt like a win. Logan found Isabella in her office after the meeting, staring out at the city. "We made it," he said. "We made it through round 1, still have 3 months to go." "We'll make it through those too." Isabella turned to look at him. "You know what's strange?" "What?" "A few months ago, I would have been terrified of losing this job. Would have done anything to keep it. But now?" She paused. "Now I think I'd be okay if they replaced me. Not happy, but okay. Because I know the company would survive. You'd make sure of it." "I'm not you, Isabella." "No, you're better in a lot of ways. You don't have the same ego attachment to this place. You can make hard decisions without taking them personally." "That's not true. I take everything personally." "Maybe. But you don't let it paralyze you. That's what counts." They stood together at the window, watching the city lights begin to glow in the gathering dusk. "I'm glad you found me that night," Logan said quietly. "In the car. I don't know where I'd be if you hadn't." "Probably in the same car, still working, still trying to fix things." "Maybe, but I wouldn't have had help." Isabella smiled. "Neither would I." 6 months after the audit, the board held their final review meeting. The structural changes were 90% implemented, the new controls were working, and Catherine Ross had given them a clean preliminary assessment for the next full audit. Robert Chen stood to address the board. "I think we can all agree that the past 6 months have been transformative for this company. The controls we've put in place are industry-leading. Our regional operations are better integrated than they've ever been, and our executive team has demonstrated exceptional capability during a challenging period." He looked at Isabella. "I move that we remove Isabella Hart from probationary status and confirm her permanently as CEO. All in favor?" Every hand went up, even Patricia's, though she looked like it physically pained her. "Motion carries unanimously," Robert said. "Congratulations, Isabella. Now let's make sure we don't have to do this again." After the meeting, Logan found Isabella in her office, just sitting at her desk with her eyes closed. "You okay?" he asked. She opened her eyes. "I wasn't sure they were going to vote yes." "I was." "Liar." "Okay, maybe I had some doubts, but they made the right call." Isabella stood, walked to where Logan was standing, and hugged him. It was the first time she'd ever hugged him, and for a moment Logan froze, surprised. Then he hugged her back. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for everything, for saving my company, for being honest with me, for not giving up when everything was falling apart." "You saved me first," Logan said. "I was just returning the favor." They pulled apart, both slightly embarrassed. "Drinks?" Isabella asked. "I think we've earned them." "Yeah, definitely." They went to a quiet bar downtown, just the two of them, and ordered whiskey that tasted expensive because it was. They toasted to survival, to 6 months of hell, to making it through intact. "What now?" Logan asked. "Now we run the company. Make it better. Build something that lasts." Isabella took a sip of her drink. "And maybe take some weekends off. Radical concept, I know." "I'm seeing Mia this weekend. You should come with us. We're going to the Science Museum." "You want me to come?" "Yeah, I think you'd like her. And she already thinks you're cool because you have a pool." Isabella smiled. "Okay, I'll come." They finished their drinks and walked back to the car. The city felt different now, not threatening, not overwhelming, just alive, full of possibility. On the drive home, Isabella said, "You know what I realized?" "What?" "For the first time in 4 years, I'm not scared of losing everything. I still care about the company, still want it to succeed, but it doesn't feel like my entire identity anymore." "What changed?" "I found something else that matters. People who matter." She glanced at him. "You, Mia, having a life outside of boardrooms and spreadsheets." Logan understood exactly what she meant. He'd spent so long defining himself by his failures that success felt foreign. But gradually, quietly, he'd started building something new, a relationship with his daughter, a home that felt like more than just a place to sleep, work that challenged him without consuming him. We should do this more often, he said. Take time to appreciate what we've built instead of just chasing the next crisis. Agreed. Starting with actually using that pool, I don't think I've been swimming since you moved in. It's October. Isn't it too cold? It's heated. No excuses. That weekend, Logan brought Mia to the Science Museum with Isabella. They spent 4 hours looking at dinosaur bones and touching starfish and building circuits. Mia held both their hands as they walked through the exhibits, chattering constantly about everything she was learning. Daddy, did you know that stars are actually suns far away? I did know that, yeah. And that dinosaurs had feathers? Some of them did. That's so cool. Isabella caught Logan's eye over Mia's head and smiled. Logan smiled back, feeling something warm and certain settle in his chest. This was what mattered. Not board meetings or stock prices or proving he was worthy of his position. This, right here. Connection and presence and showing up for the people who needed him. After the museum, they got ice cream and sat in the park while Mia ran around feeding ducks. Sarah had agreed to let Logan keep her until dinner, which meant they had the whole afternoon. She's happy, Isabella observed. Yeah, she is. So are you. Logan thought about that. Yeah, I guess I am. Good. You deserve to be. They sat in comfortable silence, watching Mia chase pigeons and laugh when they flew away. The sun was warm, the air crisp with autumn. Logan's phone buzzed with work emails, but for once, he didn't check them. The work would be there tomorrow. Today was for this. Eventually, they headed back to the mansion. Mia fell asleep in the car, exhausted from running around all day. Logan carried her inside and laid her on the couch while Isabella made hot chocolate. When Mia woke up, groggy and disoriented, she looked around at the living room and said, "Is this my house too?" Logan glanced at Isabella, unsure how to answer. "It can be," Isabella said gently. "Whenever you're here, it's your house too." "Cool. Can I pick which room is mine?" "Talk to your dad about that." After Sarah picked Mia up, Logan and Isabella sat in the kitchen with the leftover hot chocolate. "She asked about having a room here," Logan said. "I heard. Is that okay? Don't want to overstep." "Logan, you live here. If Mia's going to be visiting regularly, she should have her own space. Pick whichever guest room you want, and we'll set it up for her." "You sure?" "I'm sure." Isabella smiled. "Besides, this place has been too empty for too long. It's nice having people in it again." Over the next few months, they settled into a routine that felt sustainable. Logan worked reasonable hours, left the office by 6 most days, spent his evenings with Mia or helping Isabella with strategic planning. The company continued to grow, the new controls held, and slowly, painfully, they built something that felt stable. One night in December, Logan found Isabella decorating a Christmas tree in the living room. She'd clearly bought it that afternoon. There were still pine needles on the floor, and the thing was massive, easily 12 feet tall. "You realize we have to decorate all of that," Logan said. "That's why I waited for you. Come on, help me with the lights." They spent 2 hours stringing lights and hanging ornaments, bickering good-naturedly about the right way to distribute them. Isabella had strong opinions about ornament placement. Logan mostly just hung things wherever there was space. "You're terrible at this," Isabella said, rearranging a cluster of silver balls he'd just hung. "You have impossibly high standards for Christmas trees." "I have appropriate standards. There's a difference." When they finally finished, they stood back to admire their work. The tree glowed softly, filling the living room with warm light. "It's beautiful," Logan said. "It is." Isabella handed him a glass of wine. "To surviving our first year working together." "To many more." They clinked glasses and drank. "Can I ask you something?" Isabella said after a while. "Always." "Are you happy?" "Really happy. Not just saying you're fine." Logan thought about it. About Mia's room down the hall, decorated with posters she'd picked out herself. About work that challenged him without destroying him. About coming home to a house that felt warm instead of empty. "Yeah," he said. "I'm really happy." "Good. Me too." They stood together in front of the tree, watching the lights twinkle, and Logan realized something he hadn't expected. Somewhere in the past 6 months, between the audits and the board meetings and the Sunday afternoons with Mia, this had stopped being temporary. This was his life now, his home, his family, unconventional as it was. He'd spent so long running from failure that he'd forgotten what it felt like to build towards something, to have a foundation that wouldn't collapse the moment he made a mistake. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For giving me a chance when I had nothing left, for seeing something in me that I couldn't see in myself." Isabella set down her wine glass. "You know what I saw that night?" "What?" "Someone who refused to quit even when quitting would have been easier. Someone who cared about doing the job right more than he cared about his own comfort. That's rare, Logan. That's worth investing in." "I wasn't worth much that night." "You were worth everything. You just couldn't see it yet." Logan felt his throat tighten. "I'm glad you could." They stood there for a long moment, neither speaking, just existing in the warm glow of the Christmas tree and the quiet certainty of having found something that mattered. Outside, snow began to fall, dusting the yard in white. Logan watched it through the window and thought about how far he'd come. From sleeping in his car to standing in a mansion, from losing everything to building something new. It wasn't perfect, nothing ever was, but it was his, and it was real, and it was enough, more than enough. It was home,